The rainwater hits the sun and falls on a tent. Outside, a bunch of undead are gathered. Someone bangs on the door desperately, asking to be let in. He says he's Zhang Heng. Inside, people are hiding while he desperately begs to be saved. However, the door is being blocked by 3 guys, and one of them wonders what they are going to do. That's when a blonde girl shouts, telling them to let him in. She says Zhang Heng is a classmate, and they can't abandon him like that, so they should let him in now. However, one of the guys says that it's crazy because surely he must have already been bitten by the zombies. The blonde replies that it doesn't matter, she's the class representative, and she wasn't going to abandon her friends, so she would take responsibility for whatever happened. She points out that leaving him out there screaming for help is the same as killing a person. One of the guys grits his teeth. He turns to the guy next to him named Yi Bai and says he's going to open the door, and that Yi Bai should close it as soon as the person enters. Before Yi Bai can respond, the guy starts counting. Everyone was on edge. On the count of 3, he turned the doorknob. However, at that moment, Yi Bai was pushed by the guy who had already turned into a zombie. Everyone inside the room was shocked, and the protagonist shouted, warning that Yi Bai had already been infected. The blonde tries to run, and everyone starts begging for help. The poor protagonist uses his hand to defend himself from the bite. Naturally, he gets his arm bitten. At that moment, he starts writhing in pain and strangely begins receiving memories. That day, he lost his arm. The creatures invaded, and everyone tried to escape. Soon after, the entire city had been taken over by the end of the world. A hooded man asks if he's sure he knows what he's doing. Doctor watches him, and he knew he had only 2 things to do. With that, he pressed the door handle. The first was to save himself, and the second was to seek revenge. Now he was back in the present. At the moment before the door was opened, after living his entire life in an apocalypse without an arm, he was back to when it all started. Outside, Zhang is banging, asking to be let in. And the blonde once again says to open the door, saying that she was the representative and wasn't going to abandon her classmates. Yi Bai recognizes Ruoxi and wonders why she looks so young now. She asks if they are deaf and tells them to let Zhang in because if they don't, they'd be killing that guy. Yi Bai celebrates that everything he had planned had worked and he came back to change the world. He then calls after the representative. He warns her that Zhang Heng, who's outside, might have been bitten by a zombie, so how was she going to deal with the consequences? She responds that since no one saw him being bitten, there was no way to know, and as the representative, she would take responsibility for everything. Yi Bai smiles and says that's fine. He takes her hand and tells her that since that's the case, she could personally open that door. Ruoxi is startled, and the other girls are in disbelief that he told her to do it. The representative yells at him, saying that he's not a real man for asking a woman to do that. However, he says that for someone who wasn't risking anything, she sure was trying to sound morally righteous. He tells her that in the end, she's just a hypocritical woman. But Ruoxi screams and tells him to shut up. She says she's going to open that door because she was never afraid. She calls them a bunch of cowards and tells them to get out of the way. With that, she turns the doorknob. And at that moment, Zhang Heng pushes everyone, already transformed. Once again, everyone in the room is shocked. The door falls to the ground and Ruoxi slowly gets up. However, that's when she gets startled. The infected Zhang Heng was face to face with her. He charges at her immediately, and everyone in the room starts trying to escape. She grabs the guy next to her, saying she was scared. Before he could react, she pushes him, telling him to protect the representative. But a foot comes crashing down. It was Yi Bai, who kicked her in the ribs. The guy threw her as bait for Zhang Heng. Our boy smiles while the zombie grabs her by the waist, and the monster goes straight for her ear. But at that moment, someone grabbed a screwdriver, and they blew the zombie's head apart. The poor girl was drenched, while our boy just had a sinister grin. However, she falls outside, embraced by the zombie. She turns to Yi Bai and begs to be saved, but he remembers how much he suffered in the past life because of this girl's persecution. He grabs the door off the floor and starts to close it while she asks him what he thinks he's doing. With that, he locks her outside. He turns to everyone and asks why they weren't closing that door. The scared and fearful group started saying they were going to block the door. They then piled all the furniture, boxes, and ladders in front of it. Outside, Ruoxi kept banging, asking what they were doing. While she pleaded for help, everyone was blocking the entrance. She kept struggling, saying she was the class representative and couldn't be treated like this. The other girls didn't have the courage to do anything. Meanwhile, the rest of the group continued blocking the room. Yi Bai stood there, watching everything. Time passed, and finally the rain stopped. The group commented that they could no longer hear Ruoxi's voice. Now, everyone in the room was afraid of Yi Bai for kicking the representative. As far as they remembered, he had been an extremely kind boy. So why did he seem to have suddenly become a different person? Yi Bai looked back at that moment. The girls were all terrified and crying. The protagonist asked why it seemed like everyone was afraid of him. Hesitant, they answered that they weren't. The blonde boy thanked him, saying that if it hadn't been for him, he would have been killed by the representative. Everyone started siding with Yi Bai, saying that girl was filthy and only wanted to kill the guy to save herself. Yi Bai smiled. He said that since everyone was so brave, they should open the door because he wanted to take a look outside. The group was a bit scared, wondering why he wanted to go out. He then said he agreed that kicking her hadn't been a good idea and he wanted to see how she was doing now. His friends, however, insisted, saying it was crazy since there were zombies outside. But Yi Bai shouted, telling everyone to get out of the way. Scared, of course, the group started moving everything out of the way. They opened the door and slowly he stepped outside. He stepped onto the grass and said that apparently the representative in Jiang Hang had disappeared. The sun had risen and the zombies had vanished. At that moment, the group closed the door on him. From inside, they yelled that they shouldn't let that crazy murderer back in because he would kill everyone. However, Yibai didn't seem to care at all. He continued walking across the field, while everyone wondered if he had lost his mind. That's when the blonde boy was startled. A female zombie was standing face to face with Yibai, and he was calmly walking toward her. The creature noticed him, but he calmly kept approaching. He smiled and gripped the tool. In the next moment, he rushed at her, and everyone was left wondering why he was charging at the zombie. The poor creature didn't even understand what was happening when she took a blow to the head. Boy, if he didn't stop, he smashed her right into the ground, and that was that. The group inside was now certain that guy had gone insane. However, our protagonist was pretty exhausted for someone who had just done all that. The boy went over to the creature's remains and pulled out a pearl. He smiled and said he had found an energy stone. That wasn't just the origin of the apocalypse, but also an extremely necessary material. At that moment, even a footstep behind him. He turned and faced an old zombie. The monster was coming at him slowly. Yibai grabbed the tool again, ran toward it, and everyone inside saw him finish off another one. The girl was nearly vomiting while the blonde boy wanted to know why he had gone so crazy. As far as he could remember, that kid had been a coward, so how had he changed so much? Everyone began thinking about how terrifying he was and believed he was pretending to be someone else. One of the boys said it was a good idea to let him back in since he was really strong and could help kill the zombies. But the others didn't want to support that because he was a lunatic and could end up killing everyone. Suddenly, the window shattered. Yibai asked if his classmates were still in there. He told them to come outside and kill zombies because it was a lot of fun. The poor souls were all trembling, and at that moment, they warned him something was behind him. A zombie had appeared and leaped at him. But Yibai just looked, stretched out his foot, and kicked it in the chest. Once again, he grabbed the tool and struck it in the jaw. As he finished off the creature, the group watched, terrified from behind. Another one fell dead to the ground. Our boy wiped his face while everyone else was too stunned to say anything. He noticed he was being washed and commented that he didn't know if this liquid was going to infect him. He said he wanted to travel with his friends, but it was too risky since he didn't want to hurt them. With that, he left, saying he hoped they would all survive. His friends wondered if he was really going to leave just like that. And with that, they were all left behind in that room. Our boy walked alone across the campus. He climbed the stairs while thinking that this was the beginning of the apocalypse. On the first day, 50% of the population had been infected, and politics, the economy, and society had collapsed. The number of creatures kept increasing, along with humanity's fear and despair. Professor Zanhan named this period the Dark Era. In his past life, he had to tear off his own arm to survive that day. For 15 years, he endured hunger, despair, and torture, until he finally met a man known as the Mechanic, who was able to send him back to the past. Calmly, he walked through the streets. Some people watched him from hiding, wondering if he wasn't afraid of dying. Others suggested inviting him inside, but they said that if he was walking alone, he must be dangerous. Yibai ignored everything and walked near a park. The zombies were there standing still, seemingly ignoring him. But as soon as he turned his back, those bastards came after him. The blonde boy shouted that the kid was going to die, and the old man said it was crazy to go out looking for food in a world like this. However, Yibai just smiled, grabbed his tool again, and struck the first one in the head. One more swing and another zombie fell to the ground. A hard slam into the ground, and the guys watching wondered where all that courage came from. But someone else was watching him from behind a curtain. A girl muttered that sooner or later she would kill that bastard. Man, what's that about? Our boy is killing zombies. Why are you mad at him, girl? After finishing off 3 creatures, our boy was exhausted. But then he heard something else, a flock of birds coming from behind. 3 more zombies were approaching. He quickly realized he couldn't handle all of them. The zombies slithered towards him and he ran off. He knew the previous noises had attracted a horde to that place. From inside another house, a spunk watched, saying that kid was running straight toward them. That's when Yibai noticed a convenience store next to him. He started banging on the door, asking to be let in. He looked at the camera and said he needed help because he was being chased by a horde of zombies. The old man on the other side said it was ridiculous, and no one would ever open the door for a kid like that. But suddenly, the gate began to rise. At the same moment, a zombie turned the corner. It leaped toward him and Yibai hit it in the head again. But an old woman was coming down the avenue, and he struck her in the face with the tool as well. He dove under the gate and rolled inside. The zombies started pounding on the door, but finally he was safe for a while. And man, what he found was a loaded base. From behind a computer desk, a little girl was watching him. Meanwhile, at the nightclub next door, Spank was watching and saying that it looked like that kid was killing everything. The guy with the mohawk turned and told Brother Centipede that a student had killed about 6 zombies on his own. The least cliche guy in the apocalypse laughed. As always surrounded by women, he said it seemed like those zombies were weaker than he thought. If a student could manage it, it obviously wouldn't be hard for them. Back at the convenience store, Yibai smiled. He looked at the counter and told the person behind it to come out because he had already seen her. Besides, she should hand over the key so he could lock the door. But the person on the other side remained silent. He let out a sigh and started groaning, saying that his wound hurt a lot and he was about to die. Suddenly, the girl came out from behind the counter. She stepped in front of him and tossed him some medicine. But man, he's cruel. He grabbed her by the arm. For God's sake, don't turn this into a romance. She looks like someone's daughter. Yabai told her to hand over the control, assuring her he wouldn't do anything. She asked what control he was talking about, but she clearly had it in her hand. He reached for it and snatched it from her grip. Immediately, she ran off in a panic. She hid behind the counter and kept watching him. Man, he kicked one of the shelves, startling the girl. He said she was an idiot for believing him when he said he was injured. Some time passed, and it started raining. Our boy was lying on the bed, exhausted. The same little girl was tending to his amputated arm. Obviously, Yabai was in excruciating pain. After a while, she said she was done, and our boy thanked her for saving him. She opened the first aid kit and said that it was really dangerous outside and her father had told her to stay here. He could rest there, and later she would bring him some food. With that, she left the room while he thought she was way too kind. She was the only person out of all the doors he knocked on who let him in. If it weren't for her, he would have been eaten by those zombies outside. But after a while, he heard her asking what some guys were doing. That immediately woke Yabai up. Some people were standing in front of the store, and the so-called centipede thanked her for opening the door for his friends. Frightened, the little girl asked if they just wanted some food because they were hungry. He said that's exactly what they wanted, and now all the food in that place belonged to him. She told them her father would be back soon. But the guy said her father had already been used as bait for the zombies, and now that no one was there, they could start playing a game. Yabai stood in the corner listening as they took the girl's life. After stealing the food, they dumped her body on the floor, calling her an idiot. But now, back in the present, he knew this time he had to save her. First, he had to make sure she understood how cruel this apocalyptic world was, even if that meant she would see him as a bad person. She then knocked on the door, and it seemed like he was going to take the role seriously because he immediately shouted, asking why she was bothering him. She apologized, saying she had washed his clothes because they were too dirty. He got even angrier when he saw how kind she was. He told her to throw those clothes away and get out of there. A bit embarrassed, she said that was fine. He even told himself that with such a weak personality, it would be hard for her to survive in a world like this. However, taking a hot shower like this was amazing since in the future, all the water would be contaminated. He finished his bath, knowing that luckily, this convenience store had plenty of food and water. The goal now was to obtain some equipment and weapons. Looking in the mirror, he remarked that being younger was really amazing. No back pain, no burning legs, and being young was truly incredible. The only downside was that even his abs had disappeared. He opened the bedroom door and saw that she had left a suit for him. Immediately, he shouted, asking how he was supposed to fight zombies wearing something like that. The scene shifted to the nightclub. Centipede told everyone to listen up. That convenience store definitely had food and liquor, but it wouldn't last long. The plan was to get out, kill the zombies in front, and steal everything from that place. Not to mention that Maniac knew there was a cute little girl there, so it would be easy to finish everything off. He then told his brothers to go and kill the zombies so they could start the robbery. The creatures continued banging at the front of the convenience store. Meanwhile, Yabai approached and called the girl's attention. He told her to stop being so stupid and said he had a question. He wanted to know why she was there alone and what happened to her family. She explained that her father had gone to gather resources but hadn't returned. At that moment, he slammed the table, asking if she was stupid for letting him in alone like that. What if he had wanted to do something bad to her? How would she defend herself? Frightened, the girl said that he had said he was hurt and covered in blood, so she was afraid of letting him die out there. But once again, he shouted, asking if she hadn't noticed that he was being chased by a bunch of creatures. With a personality like that, she would just be a burden, so it would be easier for him to kill her and save himself the trouble. However, since it would be boring to be alone from now on, she would have to obey him. He warned her that she'd have to do everything he said, or he would kill her on the spot. The group from the nightclub was heading toward the zombies. Or rather, the zombies were heading toward them. They went out with courage, but after seeing the first one get devoured, they all hesitated. They began questioning whether these creatures were different from the ones the student had killed. But Centipede told them to charge ahead or he would kill the whole group himself. However, one of them ran off, saying that dying to the zombies was scarier. Centipede then grabbed him by the hair, threw him toward the zombies, and said his wish had been granted. The fool asked how he could do such a thing. While he was being devoured, the rest of the group was finishing off the creatures. The problem was that Centipede soon realized there were too many, and they would have to flee. The peace had been disturbed by the horde following them. Meanwhile, the convenience store had become peaceful. A little girl climbed the stairs and brought some ramen to our boy, saying she had made it for him. She also brought the hot water he had asked for, but he told her to get out of there because she had done enough. He warned her that unless he called for her, she better not come into that room. With that, she closed the door and he prepared the noodles. He started eating immediately because he was starving. As soon as he tasted it, he got excited and smiled, saying it was really good. However, our boy grabbed the bottle of hot water. He started approaching and Centipede asked what he was doing. Our guy took off the cap and poured it on him. Man, his hand turned red and blistered immediately. Centipede was in agony but couldn't let go of the hand or he would fall to the zombies. Yabai told him he was an idiot for asking for help while threatening to kill someone. But at that moment, someone tugged at his sleeve. When he looked back, it was the little girl telling him to stop. She warned him that it would be better to let that guy in and stop hurting him. That surprised both the protagonist and Yabai. He immediately turned to the girl and told her to get out of there because he hadn't called for her. But she kept insisting, saying that her father had told her not to hurt others. He stood silent for a second. Then he asked if she wasn't afraid of that guy coming into the house and killing her. Centipede, however, said he would never do something like that. He was just starving and had ended up in this situation because he was surrounded by zombies. The outside was already full of creatures, so unfortunately, he couldn't leave anymore. Yabai was angry that the girl had interrupted his plan to kick the guy in the head and let the zombies eat him. Then he noticed a box cutter on the table. Centipede came in, thanking her for her kindness. But he warned that now that he was inside, this was his territory and anyone who refused to obey would have to die. Now the girl realized she had made a mistake. The sky was dark and there were zombies everywhere. A bald man and a boy were blocking the door. It was the remaining people from the nightclub, and the bald man said it was that bastard Centipede's fault for dragging everyone into this. The girls were all screaming in panic, and they didn't know what to do because now that bastard must be dead. The worst part was that the wooden door was about to be destroyed by the creatures outside. The bald man couldn't see a way to keep the place standing. He called out to the girls, telling them to come help block the door. But as he looked at them, he thought to himself that he would have liked to enjoy them more, but unfortunately, that wasn't going to happen. The only way to survive was to run away and let them die. Back at the convenience store, Centipede stood in front of Yabai. Smiling, he told the girl that she was cute but too naive to think he wouldn't kill anyone. However, now that he was inside, he would give her the chance to surrender and become his slave. Then he looked to the side and said he had to deal with the bastard who poured hot water on his hand first. Out of revenge, he made sure the boy would suffer as much as possible. But Yabai stood silently, holding the box cutter in his hand. The little girl insisted, saying that her family owned that convenience store. She added that downstairs there was chocolate, plenty of snacks, and enough food for everyone there. The two stood in silence for a second. The girl smiled, saying everyone could eat together and live peacefully and happily. Centipede lost his temper, lunging at her, asking if she was making fun of him. But the box cutter came in. In half a second, Yabai slashed at the guy's hand. Centipede screamed in agony, but Yabai spun the box cutter, gripping it in a reverse hold. Centipede blocked his move. Our boy was aiming for his throat, but it was undeniable that the guy was much bigger and landed a kick to Yibai's stomach. Our boy was thrown back and the girl fell to the ground with him. Bleeding, Yabai walked across the room toward him. He mourned that it was the first time in his life that someone had made him this mad. Yabai couldn't believe that with one kick, the guy had broken some of his ribs. At that moment, Centipede started stomping on his leg. Our boy was in agony. Centipede wanted to know how he had killed a zombie so easily earlier. Yabai said he wouldn't tell, and the guy replied that he was asking for death. He began stomping on him, saying eventually he would change his mind. The little girl was just watching. Yabai was using this as an opportunity to teach her a lesson, but the price was already too high. He then told the guy to stop, saying he would tell him. Centipede told him to explain quickly, promising he would cause the least amount of pain when he killed him. But Yabai spat blood in his face. Of course, this didn't make the guy happy. He threw Yabai against the wall and kicked him in the stomach again. Centipede asked if he thought this was fun and started stomping on him again. Man, he told Yabai to die and hit him in the jaw. I think our boy's attempt to teach a lesson is going a bit too far. But that's when the shift finally came. The little girl whipped him across the neck. Centipede turned, asking what she thought she was doing. He shoved her hard, throwing her to the ground and grabbed the box cutter. He screamed in a rage, saying they were both going to die. But time was up, and Yabai landed a blow to the back of his neck with a stick. With that, Centipede passed out on the floor. Our boy was exhausted and could barely stand. The frightened little girl asked if he had died. Seeing the pool of strawberry juice, she wondered if she had really killed someone. Yabai then placed a hand on her shoulder. He told her it was okay because she had done what was necessary. Besides, that bastard was an evil man. Confused, she asked why he had acted that way when all she had done was try to help him. But that's when Yabai told her that bastard wasn't dead. She seemed excited and said that if that was the case, she should save him. But our boy threw her aside. He tossed her out of the room and said he had never met anyone as stupid as her. He slammed the door, muttering that this girl really made him mad. Not to mention that bastard had now dirtied his whole room. He grabbed Centipede by the leg and dragged his body toward the window. Then with a swift kick, he sent him flying to the zombies. Man, he fell to the ground like a piece of trash. And for the zombies, it was a feast and they all gathered. That's when the poor guy opened his eyes just in time to realize he had become a meal. Yabai muttered outside that Centipede was lucky he hadn't cut off his limbs first. That's when he heard another sound nearby. In the house directly in front of him, a guy was hanging, trying to escape the zombies. The kid was about to fall, trembling and shouting for them to leave him alone. Then someone called out to him. There was Yabai, asking if anyone else was still alive in that place. The guy said that unfortunately, he was the last one. They had held the door until one of the guys let go, and then the zombies came in and ate everyone. With a trembling voice, he begged Yabai to help him so he could stay in the convenience store. But our boy told him that wasn't going to happen, and if he didn't get out of there soon, he would end up like that guy on the ground. The boy looked down and saw a centipede being eaten. Disgusted, he turned, gathered his courage, and jumped to the next ledge. The kid was a Parker King managing to balance on the railing. He ran across it, and our boy was just watching. He was disappointed that those damn zombies hadn't managed to kill everyone from the nightclub. Time passed, but the zombies still lingered outside that place. The window was broken, and our boy opened the bedroom door. Outside, the little girl was still waiting. He asked her what she was doing there, and if he hadn't told her to go take a bath. However, she looked inside the room and saw that the body had already been dragged away. He told her not to look too much, but the guy had already gone to the first floor. The girl asked if he had escaped. He replied that in the way he had thrown the guy outside, only a god could survive. She looked a bit sad and asked why he had to kill the guy like that. Even if he was a bad person, they still had a chance to turn him around. But Yibai slammed the door above her. He asked if she was so stupid that she hadn't learned a lesson after everything that happened. No matter what she did, that guy was going to try to kill her because that's how the apocalypse was. The girl repeated the word apocalypse, saying he didn't know what he was talking about. But Yibai just walked away, saying it was stupid to waste time with her there, so he was going to take another shower. But she got up and said she wanted to talk to him. She tripped like an idiot and seemed to faint. Luckily, Yibai managed to catch her. He ran to the room and put her on the bed, wondering if she had been bitten. He didn't see any wounds, so maybe it was just a fever. He remembered there should be some medicine in that room. Now it made sense why she seemed so weak from the moment he first met her. Finally, he found the box. But when he opened it, on top of the medicine was a pink notebook. He started flipping through it and realized it was a list of blood donors. Analyzing the girl's condition and what was written there, he started to understand. It seemed like the kind of medical notebook. He wondered what she had and kept flipping through it. Her name was Yo-Yor, and she was 14 years old. On top of that, she had leukemia. He lifted her shirt and began to understand why she had so many band-aids on her body. Perhaps because she had received donations, she always wanted to help people too. But unfortunately, that kindness she wanted to show to the world no longer existed. That's when he reached into his pocket and saw that he still had the apocalypse essences. He didn't know how effective they would be for this particular illness. But night was falling. Outside, the area was still full of creatures. Fortunately, the night was calm, and after some time, the sun began to rise. The zombies were all standing still, but for some reason, the sun caught their attention. Sometime later, Yibai woke up. He had fallen asleep on the table and was freezing. But he soon noticed he was being watched. When he looked back, he saw Yo-Yor standing behind the door. He found it strange that she was already up and asked if she was feeling better. She didn't answer for a second. Before she could say anything, he told her to go ahead and prepare some coffee. As she left, though, he told her to wait a second. He told her to gather some tools and food because they were going to head out to look for her father. Yo-Yor seemed a bit confused and asked if they were really going to do that. Yibai replied that yes, they were, especially since she said her father had gone out to get supplies, so they couldn't leave him out there. This annoying girl only complained, saying her father told her to be a good girl, stay in the store, and not go out looking for him. The protagonist then asked how long her father had been gone. She lowered her head and said at least 3 days. He then asked how long it usually took. She replied that it was normally half a day. He then told her to use her brain and ask herself why he hadn't come back yet. But she yelled, saying that nothing had happened, because 3 days ago he shouted that he was already on his way back. However, our boy was cruel and asked if she had received any other messages in the past 3 days. He could have been bitten by zombies or fallen into a trap and might be waiting for rescue. Shouldn't they be out there trying to save the guy? But she lowered her head again and said her father told her not to leave, no matter what happened. Our boy got up angry and said she was an idiot. He asked why she wasn't willing to help her father, who might be in need of assistance. Why was she so eager to help that criminal earlier but didn't want to go out and save her father now? And he told her to understand that he wasn't asking for her opinion. He could finish her off right there and go out by himself. But because she saved him, he would first find her father as payment. He ordered her to stop whining and gather her things because they were going out. The poor girl ran off in a panic and almost fell down the stairs. Yibai was getting exhausted from these conversations. Outside, the city was destroyed and the zombies were still staring at the sky, until suddenly they heard a sound. From behind, a jeep was coming down the street. Man, these crazy zombies think they can stop him with their arms. Yeah, right, grab them by the chest. Everyone goes flying to the sides, knocked out. Meanwhile, back at the convenience store, our protagonist was stocking up on food and preparing to leave. He looked behind him and asked why she was hiding and if she had finished packing everything. Looking a bit downcast, she seemed all cute but sad. Our boy asked why she was wearing that kind of outfit, as they weren't going to a party. But he quickly changed the subject, asking where the instant noodles he had asked for were. She handed it over, and he started eating. While she looked around the store, he began planning what they were going to do once they opened the door. At the very least, he would have to kill a bunch of zombies and find a working car. Then he'd have to make sure she got into the car without doing anything stupid, which would be pretty difficult. He noticed she was eating some spicy sticks and asked for one. The girl was feeling sad from being scolded all the time. However, someone was approaching the store just as she was handing him the snack. They were standing there when in the next second, everything was thrown around. The place had turned into a mess and Yi-bai asked if it had been an earthquake, but a car had crashed halfway into the store. The protagonist was startled, wondering why something had invaded the store. The car was sitting there and suddenly the door opened. A man in military gear got out and started laughing. A bald, chubby guy said he was lucky to find a convenience store. He kicked a zombie and stomped on it, saying that a good zombie was a dead zombie. He headed toward the store, saying it was time to fill his belly. As soon as he walked in and saw a bunch of snacks, his eyes lit up. He immediately crouched down, licking his lips, saying he had found his favorites. The city center was empty, so he came out to this deserted area and apparently got lucky. But that's when the box cutter appeared. Yi-bai warned him to drop everything he was holding and not to move. The last insect that had come in had already been disposed of and he wouldn't hesitate with another. But in that moment, the chubby guy moved and threw snacks at his face. Yi-bai closed his eyes for a second, and the guy grabbed the stash and bolted. He ran back to the car and slammed the door shut. But man, Yi-bai showed up at the window and wasn't going to let him escape that easily. He called the guy a filthy pig and told him to die. Just as the box cutter was about to do its work, the guy begged for forgiveness, saying he surrendered. But of course, that's when Yo-Yor told him to stop killing people. She awkwardly said that and saw both of them staring at her. She awkwardly explained that she didn't want him to die because he caused damage to the store, so someone had to pay for it. Yi-bai just observed while the chubby guy trembled. He made a sinister grin and said she was right. He turned to the chubby guy and told him he would have to leave the car as payment for the damage to the store. He immediately told Yo-Yor to bring her bags and load up the car because they were leaving. She agreed, but then noticed something. The chubby guy apologized, saying he only destroyed the door because he was starving and didn't know they were inside. Then Yo-Yor stepped outside with her bags and was startled. There was a horde of zombies approaching because of the crash. The chubby guy was scared, wondering why there were so many, especially since he had just killed a bunch. Yo-Yor quickly jumped into the car. He closed the door and the chubby guy told them to buckle up. He immediately floored it because several zombies had lashed onto the car. He gripped the seat as the truck ran over everything, and the chubby guy hit the gas hard. Man, he was tearing through the city, but the bastard seemed to be enjoying it. He was even drifting like he thought he was in Fast and Furious. Yi-bai told him to drive properly or he was going to get a nice slash to the neck. The chubby guy tried to explain that they needed to kill the zombies first or they wouldn't be able to get through. But that's when our boy asked Yo-Yor what address her father had gone to for supplies. She said that in his last call, he was heading to the Fudong supermarket. The chubby guy said that place was crazy since it was always packed and must be crawling with zombies. But Yi-bai told him to stop whining and just drive or he'd be the one to die there. They seemed to escape the horde and the chubby guy said if things got boring, you could turn on some music. At least on the road, they could calm down a little. The zombie lying on the ground with a branch in its hand grazed its arm. As the car approached, man, the chubby guy had no mercy and ran right over it. As he sang along to some music and ate candy, he plowed through everyone. Clearly, this bastard was enjoying the whole process, and Yi-bai told him to be quieter because he wanted to rest a bit. But the chubby guy said not to worry, as the car was very tough, so there was no problem. Yi-bai, however, raised the box cutter and asked if he wasn't going to listen. At that moment, everything went silent and he stopped the car. Our protagonist told him that he didn't order him to stop the car, just to stop making noise. That's when the chubby guy realized the gas had run out. Yo-Yor and our boy screamed in frustration. He cursed the bastard, who apologized, saying he forgot there wasn't a gas station nearby. He started eating frantically, saying that if he was going to die, he might as well die with a full stomach. Yo-Yor, on the other hand, began to hear some noises approaching. A huge zombie appeared right in front of her window. The car had stopped right in front of a park, and the horde of zombies was starting to surround them. The protagonist knew that even if the car wasn't destroyed, they were going to die trapped in there. But that's when a knife behind his seat caught his attention. The zombies were banging on the window. Suddenly, someone kicked the door, sending it flying off. Yi-bai calmly stepped out, and the zombie came toward him. He pulled out the machete and slashed through another one. Inside, Yo-Yor was terrified, watching everything. Bar Boy was celebrating, saying the blade was sharp. Another zombie approached, and he remarked that for amateurs like these, this kind of weapon was more than enough. He landed another strike, and two more approached. He glanced to the side, kicked one in the chest, and finished off the other. The chubby guy inside the car was stunned, watching everything. Another large zombie fell to the ground. He couldn't believe that this student was so strong. Even Yo-Yor was impressed. Yi-bai banged the handle of the knife on the car and told the chubby guy to get out. The chubby guy was terrified, but our boy warned him that if he stayed inside, he'd die sooner or later anyway. There were other cars outside, so maybe they'd be lucky enough to find some gasoline in one of them. While he dealt with the zombies, the chubby guy was supposed to start collecting some gas. He reminded him that he had been singing the whole trip, so he'd better know how to handle a vehicle. Yi-bai told Yo-Yor to stay in the car and not leave as it was too dangerous. Yi-bai then told the chubby guy to come with him. The chubby guy, still not mentally prepared, said they needed more time. But in the next second, Yi-bai had already killed the first zombie. The poor chubby guy couldn't believe that this boy had no fear at all. Yi-bai moved on, slashing through another one. He looked back and told the guy to hurry up. But then the chubby guy remembered that there were some gasoline canisters in the truck bed. He realized how useful Yibai was and wanted to make better use of him. Yibai killed another zombie. He looked back and asked what the guy had said. Embarrassed, the chubby guy said he had been in shock and forgot. But if they waited a little, he'd fill up the tank. Yibai told him to wait and do that later. The chubby guy was confused. Our boy said he needed help collecting something. He opened his hand, revealing a green pearl. He explained that they were found in the brains of zombies, and while he killed them, the chubby guy was supposed to collect them. The poor guy, who had never done anything like that before, started sweating. But Yibai said it was easy and showed him how to do it. He quickly demonstrated the process and asked if the chubby guy understood. Obviously, the guy said it was too disgusting and he'd rather stay in the vehicle. Yibai warned him that if he went back to the vehicle, he'd end up as ground meat. The chubby guy then asked how he was supposed to do it without a knife. Our boy told him to use his hands, saying he was going in, and if the guy didn't help, he'd be killed too. With that, Yibai took a step forward and finished off another zombie. The chubby guy, disgusted, approached the first zombie. He ran back to the jeep, grabbed a tool, and prayed for protection. The protagonist said they didn't have time to waste and told him to start collecting right away. But the chubby guy, hesitant, wondered if the zombie was still alive. He struck it and went to collect the pearl, impressed that it was actually easier than he thought. There really was a little crystal inside. He never imagined that the human head produced something like that. He then asked Yibai if those were worth a lot, but Yibai told him to shut up. The chubby guy began to think that maybe this was why humans had turned into zombies and wondered if he should keep a few. Meanwhile, Yibai was finishing off another batch. After a while, he said that was enough, and they wouldn't bother with the ones farther away. He thought to himself that getting used to this body without training was quite difficult. He turned and asked the chubby guy how many he had collected. The chubby guy was proud, saying he had gotten several. He said it was fun, and Yibai told him to clean them and store them. Then it was time to fill the tank so they could get moving. Yibai then went to check on Yahello. However, her illness seemed to have worsened again. He was startled and grabbed her arm, calling her name. He placed a hand on her forehead and realized the fever was worse than before. He began rummaging through her bag, remembering that they had grabbed some medicine and water. The chubby guy appeared and asked what was wrong with her, but Yibai told him to shut up and fill the gas tank. After some time, she seemed to have stabilized a bit. The chubby guy suggested that maybe it was because she had stayed in the heat of the car for too long and asked if she was feeling better. Yibai, not in the mood for chit-chat, threatened him again. He said they had lost time because the chubby guy pretended they had no gas, and if he hit anything else, the next person to die would be him. The chubby guy immediately apologized, saying he would never hide anything again. Yahello seemed to wake up and the car continued down the road. After a while, the chubby guy complimented our boy's swordsmanship and asked what his name was. Our protagonist replied that it was polite to give your own name before asking someone else's. The chubby guy said his name was Zhao Hang, and he owned a workshop in the city. His friend had left this truck at the shop for repairs and never came back to pick it up because of the apocalypse. Then our boy said his name was Yibai. But suddenly, Zhao Hang slammed on the brakes, and our boy had to hold on as he drifted on the road. The protagonist immediately threatened him, asking why he did that. Zhao Hang explained that the entire road ahead was blocked by burning vehicles. The problem was that Yahello was still trembling. At least now she had stood up. When she looked out the window, Yibai said it didn't seem like they would be able to get to the side where her father was. Yahello just watched silently, with nothing much to say. The chubby guy mentioned that there was another route, but it would take much longer, and he asked if they were still going to do it. Yibai replied yes, but first, they would need new weapons and equipment. He asked Zhao Hang if he knew where they could find an electrician or a weapons store. Zhao Hang thought for a second and said he knew. He told them to relax, he would take them there now. He had a friend from his hometown who was a very experienced blacksmith. This talk about a blacksmith caught Yibai's attention. Zhao Hang said there was a good chance the guy was still alive, and even if he wasn't, there would likely be plenty of items at his house. The mashi he was holding had been made personally by this guy. Yibai thought it would be perfect to have lots of resources to craft a decent weapon. Zhao Hang then began telling stories about the times he and his friend had spent together. But Yahello told him to be quiet, as our boy had fallen asleep for a bit. They crossed the bridge into another part of the city. Zhao Hang got out of the car and said, "Finally, the airplanes have arrived." Many years had passed, but that place still looked the same. Our boy asked if that place wasn't a dump and said this trip had better be worth it, or Zhao Hang would be buried there. But, as always, they would have to clear the place out before entering. Yibai asked Zhao Hang if any of those zombies looked like his friend. Zhao Hang seemed unsure, and our boy just told him to collect the pearls. But then someone told him to wait. It was Yahello from the car, saying she wanted to help. But Yibai told her she risked fainting or getting bitten, which would only get in the way. But she insisted, saying she was fine now and would be careful. Zhao Hang said that since she was brave, he would dig and she could collect the pearls. Yibai warned that if they were bitten, he wouldn't hesitate to cut them. Yahello realized that Yibai didn't feel any pain. With that, he began slashing through the zombies. Meanwhile, the chubby guy was collecting the pearls and chatting with Yahello, who was putting them in a bag. But we see that from a nearby building, someone seemed to be watching them through binoculars. A man smoking a cigarette was watching everything, and he seemed angry. At that moment, another guy entered the room calling for Brother Lu. Man, Brother Lu seemed to have PTSD, and there's no way he already finished off another guy. He said he wouldn't repeat himself again about knocking before entering. Another guy outside was trembling. Lu asked the rookie what they had come to tell him. Trembling, the guy said they had seen some people invading the blacksmith's shop next door. Lu said he had already seen that a long time ago, so why were they bothering him with it now? The guy explained that one of the 3 people who had arrived was killing all the zombies alone and seemed very strong. Lu just kept thinking. He then turned to his servant, who was obviously there, right guys? She brought him some instant noodles. He tossed the pack to the boy, telling him to eat it and give him the rest of the details later. The boy shouted his thanks, saying Brother Lu was amazing. With that, Lu stroked the poor girl who clearly wasn't happy to be there. She was so hungry that she fell to her knees, poor thing. Lu told the rookie to get the chubby guy out of there, and to gather everyone and deal with the people downstairs. Whoever finished them off would get a reward. Back with Yi Bai and the group, they had finished killing everything and just needed to collect one more pearl. He told the chubby guy to check around the house while he took a look inside. He kicked open the door and found a fully equipped blacksmith's shop. As he slowly walked inside, he examined each item. He saw the anvil, and the most interesting part was that the forge was still lit, so someone must have been there recently. The chubby guy then mentioned that the house didn't seem to have any holes, but he didn't know where the blacksmith had gone. Our boy told him to bring some pearls and materials from the cars. He also told him to sharpen his blade. The chubby guy wanted to know why he didn't just take the many weapons hanging on the wall, as they were already finished. But Yi Bai explained that in a week, those kinds of weapons would be useless. Zhao Hang immediately understood that the rascal was planning to forge a new weapon. Yi Bai told him to hurry up and bring the damn pearls. Zhao Hang grumbled, saying his companion was too hot-headed. Yahello then asked what she should do. With the forge lit and the pistons pumping, the first skill of a mechanic was obviously construction. He placed the steel tube into the fire and started hammering away. Zhao Hang just stood behind, watching everything. Impressed that someone so young knew about blacksmithing, our boy told Zhao Hang to pour all the pearls into the cup. The chubby guy obeyed, and Yi Bai placed them into the fire, where they began to melt. After a while, everything turned into a green liquid. Seeing the aura rising, Zhao Hang realized it seemed like some kind of magic. Yi Bai then took a box cutter and opened a bottle of strawberry juice, pouring it into the melted pearls, which started to mix together. He then took the liquid and poured it over the blade, which began to fuse. Zhao Hang stood there, just watching everything. Our boy resumed hammering. As he hammered inside, the sounds could be heard outside, and of course, this attracted Brother Lu's group. The guy from earlier was scared to death, but the guy with the strong jawline was eager to gain a lot of resources by killing these weaklings. Another guy with long hair said the biggest reward would be spending time with someone named Higuan. However, the guy in the polo shirt said there must be a reason Brother Lu wanted them to kill this guy. The best plan was to wait until nightfall when their guard would be down, and then they could launch their attack. Back in the house, Yi Bai was busy with his crafting work. Man, the kid was really creating some futuristic mechanical stuff. Zhao Hang was starting to think our boy might be some kind of engineer from the best university in the country. Yi Bai would finish a piece and go back to forge another one. From the water, he pulled out the first completed piece. The chubby guy looked at it and said the electric pattern was really cool. Yi Bai just smiled and said that all the materials were ready. Now it was time to show the true power of a mechanic. Meanwhile, Yahello set the noodles on the table and began preparing to eat, happy to be with Yi Bai because at least she felt safe. Suddenly, someone covered her mouth. It was the perverted long-haired guy who said he was taking her to another place. But Yi Bai seemed to hear something. Just before that, inside the house, he had been sharpening the blade. He fitted it into a mechanical device and placed it on the table. Zhao Hang, curious, said he had only ever seen one of those in movies. Yi Bai grabbed 2 cables and said it was time to activate. He electrified the weapon, and it lit up with a green glow. The engine in the place was already failing, and the chubby guy was impressed. Our boy announced that the second order sword was ready. Zhao Hang wanted one too. But then they heard Yahello's voice from outside. The next second, they were running to see what was happening. They came face to face with Brother Lu's gang. Yi Bai saw Yahello unconscious in the guy's arms, and his expression turned dark. The bald guy at the front told him to drop the weapon, or the girl would die. But Yi Bai just raised his arm, slashed the ground, and a shockwave cut the guy in two. In a panic, another one tried to run. But Yi Bai simply asked where he thought he was going. He slashed again, cutting through metal like it was paper. At that point, everyone was in a frenzy, trying to escape. Meanwhile, behind them, Yi Bai had already made the first headless knight. The guy who had spoken with Lu earlier told the other to let go of the girl, or they wouldn't make it out alive. But the guy insisted on fleeing, saying that if they didn't escape, Brother Lu would kill them later. That's when a lightning slash passed in front of them, and from behind, Yi Bai was slowly approaching. But then Zhao Hang shouted, warning him that a horde of zombies was approaching from behind. The strange thing was that they were moving much faster than before, as if they had been injected with something. Zhao Hang didn't know what to do and asked Yi Bai. He gripped the handle of his blade, slashed at the zombies, and started cutting them down. Next to him, Zhao Hang was just watching in awe as Yi Bai unleashed a flurry of attacks. The problem was that, obviously, the two bastards were getting away. Zhao Hang then pointed out that they were running toward that building. Yibai said, of course, and told the chubby guy to stop standing around and chase after them with the vehicle. The chubby guy scrambled into the car, saying he understood. As he sped away, he saw that Yibai was still dealing with a lot of zombies. The mission to save the beautiful damsel now fell to him. The guys heard something behind them. Of course, it was Zhao Hang's car, and they jumped into the bus. Zhao Hang hit the brakes and saw they had arrived at what looked like the base of those guys. He got out of the car, not knowing what to do since the entrance was blocked by the bus. While the two from earlier flowed with Yo Yuer, other guys inside the building watched him through the windows. Seeing that he was just a lone chumby guy, they thought it would be easy to deal with him. They got off the bus and told him to leave the car there or everyone in that building would end up roasted. Zhao Hang said he wasn't afraid and told them to come at him. The guy in the cap ran at him, boasting that he had killed more people than Zhao Hang had eaten chicken. Man, considering Zhao Hang's size, that was a bold statement. But Zhao Hang just readied himself and said they were looking for death. That's when the green crescent moon slashed through, and of course, the guy was split in half. Man, the bus behind him was shattered as well. Zhao Hang was amazed that our boy had already killed all the zombies. But Yibai just ignored him and told him to follow. They were going to save Yao Yuer. He prepared another attack and sliced the bus in half completely. From behind the pillars, a bunch of guys were getting ready to charge at the two. Yibai, with mirrors of steel, was walking out in the open. Seeing that Yibai was a fool, one of the guys threw a knife at him. But the boy, a true apocalyptic warrior, sensed the blade and easily blocked it. He slashed back and another one was down. From behind some crates, a guy threw a Molotov cocktail. But Yibai dodged it with a quick dance step and sent another green crescent slash. Then someone fired a gun. Luckily for Yibai, he was like Neo from the Matrix and narrowly dodged the bullet. Brother Lu, watching, remarked that Yibai seemed brilliant. He said he was interested in knowing how Yibai was so strong and asked if he wanted to drink something with him. He tried to explain that he liked talented people like Yibai, but Yibai just raised his blade. Lu pointed to Yo Yuer and told Yibai not to move. She was peacefully sleeping, but in a second, she could be dead. Lu said Yibai was being treated with courtesy, so he better stop acting like that, or else he'd find out if a bullet was faster than a sword. Yibai just stood there observing. Zhao Hang asked what they were going to do in a situation like this. Suddenly, Yibai smiled and said he agreed. He was working on a major project and needed a big group of people. So if Lu gathered everyone together to talk, Yibai would give them a chance. Lu questioned if Yibai really wanted to talk to everyone, and said that if that was the case, they would welcome him. Zhao Hang whispered to Yibai that it was crazy to go up against everyone alone since they had guns. But Yibai just told him if he didn't want to come, he should just disappear. The chubby guy was trembling but said that if Yibai was leaving alone, he'd rather go too. He really was leaving and didn't regret it at all. Yibai thought to himself that the bastard was really annoying. Then the lackeys came and seemed to escort him somewhere else. A while later, he found himself in a room face to face with Brother Lu's entire group. Lu welcomed him and said they had all the healthy people within a 15-kilometer radius here, and he was the leader known as Lu Shang. He then asked the protagonist's name and what kind of help he needed. Our boy introduced himself as Yibai. He said he remembered Lu Xiang and asked if he knew how this disaster started. Lu was confused, wondering how Yibai knew him and how he knew how all this began. Yibai complimented Lu on realizing the disaster was coming and stockpiling so many supplies. He also mentioned that Lu's current plan was probably to establish the Nether Dragon Association. Lu Shang was even more confused. He said he had only shared that name with a handful of people, so how did Yibai know all of this? But our boy showed him the pearl and said he knew Lu was more interested in that. Lu Shang, tired of this, told Yibai to spill everything he knew. Yibai stayed silent for a second. Then he said that the zombie infection might have started with a virus that spread through birds from another country. Others claimed it was a kind of nuclear weapon designed to reduce the population. And the craziest theory was that an alien meteor had crashed on Earth carrying an unknown virus. Yibai said he believed Lu Shang had heard of these three possibilities, which was why he had moved the city center people to this isolated location. Lu Shang said yes, he knew a little secret about the virus. He pulled out 2 pearls from his pocket and said he still didn't understand why they existed inside the heads of the creatures, but he figured Yibai's big project and the sword he was carrying had something to do with it. Yibai confirmed this, but he said he would need help with a few things. Lu Shang agreed but said he wanted to see the sword first. Our boy started to raise it, but Lu Shang reminded him about the girl beside him. No one wanted a sad ending there. Yibai stayed silent, reluctantly handing over the sword, but as soon as Lu's lackey touched it, he nearly collapsed. He took it to Brother Lu, saying it was impossible to use something that heavy. Lu didn't believe it and tried to lift it himself, but when he realized he couldn't even pick it up, he admitted the day was full of surprises. He then told Yibai to start his show and explain what he wanted. Our boy explained that in this apocalypse, as soon as someone started getting infected, a pearl began to form in their brain. At first it was a dark pearl, but the longer it stayed inside the zombie's head, the more energy it accumulated. The energy inside the pearls could adapt well to the human body and could also be used to make powerful weapons. Lu was intrigued by the idea that the pearls could adapt to the body. He asked if it was possible to consume them to keep getting stronger. Yibai said it was possible, and most people ended up becoming zombies. Lu wanted to know what happened to those who didn't become zombies. Yibai just told everyone to watch. He would show them once. The first step was activation. He connected the two power cables, creating a green energy. It spread throughout the room, and the generators caught fire. With that, a blackout occurred. Lu immediately asked what was going on. But in the same moment, Yibai grabbed the sword. He lunged toward Lu and slashed at him, but the blade missed its mark. He countered with a quick shot, but Yibai dodged it. Yibai tightened his grip on the blade and made a clean cut through the guy. The trembling man admitted he had been careless. Our boy simply said that the damn Nether Dragon gang would die here today. In the future, they would become famous for the weapons they would create and the slavery system they would establish. But before any of that could happen, he was going to annihilate everyone. Another slash and more bodies were left in pieces. The entire floor was destroyed. Yibai felt relieved that Yahello was still asleep. He gently stroked her, thinking that although the apocalypse was cruel, he didn't want her to witness such scenes. But suddenly, someone appeared at the door. Yibai turned and saw, of course, the coward Zhao Hang, who had run off earlier. He came in with a flashlight, amazed that Yibai had wiped out everyone. Yibai simply confirmed it. He picked up a weapon from the ground and said he had successfully completed the objective. Zhao Hang asked if they had come all this way just for the weapon and not for Yuer. Yibai explained that in this new world, weapons had gone through many changes and were extremely dangerous. Now Zhao Hang was curious about what Yibai planned to transform it into. He praised Yibai's plan to have him toss some pearls into the generator, saying it was very clever. But then they heard a bottle hit the ground. They looked to the side and saw a girl collapse on the floor. In a panic, she begged them not to kill her. Zhao Hang, ever the fool, asked why there was a beautiful damsel in distress here. The girl explained that she had been captured by Lu Xiang and had been living there like a slave, suffering every day, with no relation to his gang. Yibai then asked if she knew where Lu Xiang had hidden the rest of his resources. She said she did and offered to take them there. On the way, Zhao Hang asked where she was from, and she replied she was from the eastern city. In the middle of their conversation, they stopped in front of an elevator, and she said the storage room was unfortunately on the 6th floor. Yibai told Zhao Hang to hide with Yuer while he went with the girl to check out the storage room. Meanwhile, in the wreckage of the battle, the guy from earlier was calling for help. He was shocked when he saw Brother Lu's body sliced in half. Slowly, he tried to stand up and noticed a pearl in front of him. He remembered Yibai calling it the black metal energy and Lu Xiang saying that eating it might make someone a god. Desperate and with no other options, he swallowed it immediately. His pupils contracted and veins bulged all over his body as he began to writhe in agony. Thunder struck outside as Yuer woke up in the room. She asked Zhao Hang where they were, and he told her to calm down. He explained that she had been kidnapped earlier, but he and Yibai had already saved her. At that moment, Yibai entered the room, seeing that she was awake. Zhao Hang asked if they had found anything valuable, and Yibai confirmed they had, but it would take until tomorrow to move it all. Zhao Hang then asked where the girl had gone, and Yibai explained that when he went into the storage room, she started running away. He found it strange that she ran off, especially since it was raining outside. Yibai simply told him to forget about her because he needed to sleep and rest, as the streets would be crawling with zombies now. The scene shifted to a girl taking a shower. She was calmly relaxing when a man appeared, saying that since she had mutated and was in his house, she needed to understand that nothing was free. He started trying to open the door, telling her that besides her body, she had nothing to offer. She began screaming for help, but the man said that with the rain outside, no one could hear her. But then the door cracked open. The man was startled and went out to see what happened. But boy, he made a big mistake. The girl heard a scream, and upon checking, saw that the man had been killed by a gigantic creature. The fool was thrown against the wall, and the blonde girl screamed in terror. The creature stood still, staring at her. It began to reach out its arm, and in her desperation, she begged it not to come any closer. The monster paused for a second. It saw itself in the mirror and collapsed to the ground, saying it wasn't a monster. It began asking why it had transformed like this. The creature pounded the floor, saying it didn't want to stay like that. The blonde, confused, asked who he was. He explained that he had been shot but had consumed a zombie pearl, and his body had started to mutate. The blonde was perplexed by this talk of humans transforming by eating the black metal from pearls. The guy said that someone named Yibai had explained this to him, saying he had taken the pearl from a monster's head. The blonde seemed to recognize the name and ran toward him, asking if he had really mentioned Yibai. The crazy girl suddenly got braved, demanding to know where Yibai was. The monster said that Yibai had arrived in the southern city recently and had killed everyone in a building. It turns out this blonde was the same one from the beginning, and she said she wanted to kill Yibai. But the monster told her it was impossible to kill him because he was incredibly strong. The blonde said she was in this state because of that bastard. The two were enemies. She stood there for a moment thinking and asked if he wasn't strong since he had killed that guy in a second. The monster explained that he felt strong but couldn't control his power well. Then he asked if she wasn't afraid of him. If this was the same girl from earlier, it was Ruoxi, who laughed like a maniac. She gently stroked his arm. She told him he was very strong and that if he helped her kill Yibai, she would let him do whatever he wanted. Man, this girl was crazy. Did she not realize he was a giant monster? But the crazier one got excited, lifting her up and saying that in that case, he would help her kill Yibai. She smiled, saying the plan was set. However, he didn't seem to be doing well and she asked what was wrong. He dropped to his knees and began screaming. The night passed and the next day dawned. Our boy got ready. In the warehouse, they found more instant noodles, cigarettes, and drinks. Yibai strapped his devilish sword to his back and said that now that they had gathered everything, it was time to leave. They walked down the stairs talking about supplies, but the chubby guy suddenly got scared. It looked like a meteor had fallen on his car. He started crying, panicking, saying they couldn't even open the door. Yibai was deep in thought, realizing that the damage was too big for just a rainstorm. He told Zhao Hang to step aside, then slashed the dented part. With that, the truck turned into a convertible. Man, it looked like it came straight from the factory, with the mirrors installed perfectly. They got into the car and Zhao Hang cheered that at least the engine was still working. He then asked if they were heading to find Yura's father now. Yibai simply said yes, and they hit the road. The chubby guy was excited, saying that driving a convertible was amazing. But then they attracted the attention of some zombies. Looking to the side, they saw a girl and a group of students running from a horde. Those were Yibai's former classmates, and he was surprised they were still alive. The group was running desperately, begging for help. The zombies were closing in, and of course, one clumsy girl tripped and fell. The creatures were about to reach her when a green crescent slash cut through everything. The students were shocked. They were even more startled when they saw Yibai approaching. He smiled, saying he had found his classmates again. They started thanking him, saying they thought they were going to die. The blonde guy remarked on how powerful Yibai had become and asked where he had found such strength. Yibai ignored the question and asked where they were heading now. The blonde explained that after they fled the school, they heard about setting up a camp on an island, but many had been eaten by zombies along the way. One of them saw the car and immediately asked for a ride. Another came up saying she was starving and asking if he had anything to share. Yo Yura was just watching, seeing how messed up the students were. Zhao Hang commented that they were probably eyeing his car. At that moment, Yibai told everyone to shut up. He warned them that the car didn't have much gas left, so there was no way they could take them far, and besides, they'd have to do him a favor before asking for one. The ex-classmates, excited, said they'd do whatever he asked. Yibai smiled. He called over Zhang and told him to explain the rules this time. Zhang, thrilled, was now in charge of the others. Our boy headed toward the zombies, saying he would clear them out and they should take care of the cleanup. The students were confused, but Zhang started explaining the process. He handed over the tools and began extracting the pearls. He smiled at everyone, saying it was easy. But one of the girls fainted. Yo Yur, unfazed, reassured everyone that the heads were soft, so it was easy to remove the pearls. The group was terrified, wondering what this kid had gone through to be so calm. Zhang then distributed the tools to everyone, warning them not to get bitten. But the blonde guy was now curious, wondering why the green dancer wanted those pearls. Yibai kept killing while they collected. 2 hours later, they had filled the entire sack. Yibai then told them to hand out some food, but Zhao Hang got angry, upset that Yibai was giving away food without asking him first. The students were pleading, but man, the chubby guy wasn't willing to give even a small piece. Right at that moment, a creature stepped on the car's metal frame. The transformed monster from earlier had fully mutated. Yibai realized that this was an ability user who had mutated. He immediately turned and told everyone to run. But man, he almost got slashed in the arm. He dodged back and unleashed another green crescent. But the monster was a smart human too and managed to dodge. Then, out of nowhere, someone started clapping. That damn low-cut queen had finally found our boy. Yibai was furious when he saw Ruoxi. The students were confused, wondering why their class representative was there. Ruoxi said she had survived in every way possible, just so she could one day watch Yibai die. She immediately ordered the creature to kill him. Yibai couldn't understand why the creature was siding with the low-cut queen. The monster came at him, leaving him no choice but to fight. Yo Yura called out to him and suddenly, a fireball hit between the two. On the roof was another creature, a flaming, long-haired zombie. And suddenly, the scene shifted to a ship in the middle of the sea. A guy was smoking a cigar, saying it was peaceful there because zombies couldn't fly. They were planning to live there peacefully, gradually collecting resources from other boats. Or not really, because one of the boats just exploded. The fools were terrified, and here came the flame-haired zombie. The two screamed, but it was too late. They were already gone. Back to the present, the creature was standing on top of the building in front of them. Both our boy and the transformed monster were staring at it. Yibai knew it was another transformed ability user, and even worse, an elemental. Ruoxi had no idea that elemental creatures existed, and she asked her monster if that thing was a companion of his. He responded that he didn't know, but right then, the flame monster jumped off the roof toward him. The creature grabbed him by the neck, and everyone could see that it wasn't a friend. Ruoxi's monster tried to block the flame creature, asking who she was and why she was attacking him. She planted her foot on his stomach and kicked him hard, sending him crashing into a car. Then she turned and blasted him with a wave of fire. Poor Zhao Hang was crying, devastated that their car and food were gone. but Yibai told him to stop worrying about that and start running. Our boy took off running, but Ruoxi still wanted her revenge. She ordered her monster to go kill Yibai, who was trying to escape. The monster tried to explain that things weren't looking too good for him. And then, out of nowhere, the flame creature launched a fireball straight toward Yahello. The ground exploded and everyone scattered. Yahello fell to the ground, but of course Yibai had saved her once again. Now with a wall of flames between them, Yibai told everyone to stop staring and start running for cover. Zhao Hang asked where they were supposed to go. Yibai looked around and saw the entrance to a garage across the way. He started running, telling everyone to follow him. Meanwhile, Ruoxi's monster was face to face with the flame creature. He tried to reason with her, saying they shouldn't fight, and asked if she had also eaten the black metal energy to end up in that form. The flame creature muttered the words "black pearl," but then she suddenly had a headache, fell to the ground, and said she didn't want to eat it. She explained that she had been tied to a bed and forced to consume it by a bunch of lunatics. She wanted to kill them all, and whoever kills gets the ashes. Ruoxi's monster said he had been forced to eat it too, could understand how she felt. But Ruoxi wasn't interested in this conversation and told them to hurry up because Yibai was escaping. She crossed her arms and sarcastically asked how they were going to get their revenge if they let him go. The monster reassured her, saying he could still smell Yibai's scent. The flame creature asked who this person was that they were so desperate to find. The black monster explained that Yibai was someone who knew about the pearls. Maybe he also knew how to turn them back into humans. The flame creature, thoughtful, said that if there was a way to become human again, she'd join them. Meanwhile, our boy was running with his friends, but suddenly, a car came flying and exploded in front of them. Following the scent, the creature easily tracked them down, saying their fight wasn't over yet. He knew that Yibai understood the secrets of the cursed pearl, so he had better start talking and not try anything funny. Yibai realized he couldn't avoid a fight with the monster. He told Zhao Hang to run with Yor while he stayed behind to buy them some time, but they soon ran into the flame creature. Zhao Hang said that, unfortunately, they were surrounded. Ruoxi laughed, sitting cross-legged on top of the car, saying there was no escape now. Yibai was getting tired of this damn woman. He told his friends to hide and not get close while he dealt with the creatures. The black monster came charging at him. Yibai braced himself and dodged backward. Then he pulled out his Glock and fired. Ruoxi the fool got hit in the shoulder. She screamed in pain. The black monster was confused. He thought Yibai was going to shoot him. And if you thought our boy was done, you're wrong. He fired another shot into her stomach before the monster jumped in to protect her. Yibai followed up with a green slash, and the monster had to throw himself in the way to shield her. Just then, the flame creature attacked from behind. She ignited the area, but Yibai dodged to the side. Man, she sent a firestorm his way, but he managed to deflect it with his sword. Meanwhile, Yao Yuer and Zhao Hang were watching. Yuer pulled a hatchet from her bag and threw it at the flame creature, but it just bounced off her head without doing any damage. The creature turned around and Zhao Hang asked what she had done. But with that distraction, Yibai almost landed a blow on the creature's head. However, his real target was the pipe above, which burst and sent water raining down on the flame creature, extinguishing her. With that, Yibai seized the opportunity and slashed her. She screamed in agony for a second, but Yibai pulled back his sword and almost hit her foot. The creature tried to flee, and Yibai was face to face with the black monster again. The monster warned Yibai that he would pay for this in the future. Worn out, the two creatures fled the scene. Man, Yibai made them all run away. But exhausted, he fell to his knees. Yao Yuer asked if he was hurt, but he said no. He was just relieved that they had survived two ability users in a situation like that. The chubby guy asked if he knew the origin of these creatures. Yibai remained silent for a second before explaining what happens when some humans consume those pearls. Most become zombies, but there's a small chance that some will turn into a type of creature known as ability users. The problem is that this only happens once in 10,000 cases, and it's even rarer for them to retain their consciousness. Zhao Hang wanted to know how Yibai already knew all of this. The protagonist replied that he would explain more about it later, but their current goal was to figure out where they were going next. Zhao Hang then remembered that they were without a car and food. Yibai found it strange because the apocalypse seemed to be progressing much faster than it had in the past. And before things became more dangerous, he needed to create stronger weapons. Outside, it was raining again, and the worst part was that the car was really destroyed. Zhao Hang cried, saying that at least they could save a few of the resources. And the worst of all is that those damn monsters had thrown all the cars in front of the garage to stop them from escaping, so now they had none. He handed a coat to the two of them, saying that unfortunately it was the only thing he had to protect them from the rain. Our boy then asked Yuer what the problem was. She said that she had actually been to this place before because an old friend of her father lived around here. She pointed towards a mountain, saying that if they followed that path, they would reach his house. The big guy asked who this person was and if he was still alive. She said he was a bit weird, but he was a good person, or at least she hoped he was. His house had really high walls and lots of computers and food, so he was probably safe. The big guy asked if that guy had a cyber cafe inside his house, And our boy said that since he was a friend of her dad's, maybe her dad was there too, so it might be a good idea for them to go check it out. However, the horde of zombies was coming from behind again. Yabai said he would clear the path and they would follow right behind. Meanwhile, the other big monster was also killing a bunch of zombies. He went to one of them and ripped out a pearl. He said it seemed enough and jumped onto the building. The fire monster girl was hiding from the rain. He came in from outside, called out for Ruoxi, and she was almost on the verge of passing on. He said he brought some pearls and she told him to hand them all over quickly. But the monster asked if she was sure she wanted to eat that. She told him to just hand it over and get the hell out of the room. Man, the big monster got roasted. Like the fool, he respected the girl. The fire girl asked if she had eaten it, and he said she seemed to be hesitating. Her friend said she would definitely hesitate too, especially after seeing the state she ended up in after eating that. But the big monster said he just didn't want her to die. The fire girl seemed to have cauterized her wounds, but she knew that without medical help, there was no way she could survive. And the other one understood that perhaps her only chance to survive was by eating that. The fire girl said it would be a good thing since she could mutate like them, and then they have one more person to help. They would kill whoever they wanted and take revenge on everyone. But the big monster said there might be strong people like Yi Bai in this world. Besides, her arm wasn't growing back. The monster girl said it was strange the guy's weapons seemed to be able to block even her flame. And the big dark-skinned monster said the best thing would be to kidnap that guy and force him to reveal all the truths about the pearls. At that moment, she introduced herself as Zhu Bo. And the big dark-skinned monster introduced himself as Wang Sheng. Back with our friends, another creature was being taken down. Even in the rain, it didn't stop for a moment. However, our boy seemed to be getting tired. Zhao Hang quickly noticed this and said they needed to find a place to rest. He told him not to worry about him and asked Yur where they were. She pointed to a bridge and said that after crossing it, they would go up the mountain. The problem was that the tunnel was filled with water and seemed really deep. Our boy saw that everything appeared to be clogged. However, he quickly noticed a piece of wood and told Yura to get on it, and they would push her along. The three of them then started moving through the tunnel. However, Zhao Hang was terrified, asking if it was possible for there to be zombies underwater. Yabai didn't answer and Yura called out to him. The poor guy was just trying to stay awake, but suddenly he passed out, taking her little raft with him. The poor guy plunged straight into the clean water. Back with the monsters, they were realizing that the rain wasn't stopping. Wang Sheng decided to return to the room and talk to Ruoxi. However, that's when he saw her exuding a purple energy. He asked what had happened, and she started screaming, hitting him in the chest. Zhao Bu came in and asked why they were yelling. Man, a black aura exploded throughout the entire house. And now, we're in the past life of our dear Yi Bai. He was pulled out of the water and Ruoxi asked where his mechanical group had hidden. She was angry that he wouldn't answer and told her to go to hell. She then said he was arrogant and that he would pay the price for it. With that, he was forced back into the water. Sometime later, he woke up back in the present in a little room. There, Yura was sleeping on his leg and woke up still a bit groggy. She was excited that he had finally woken up. However, he wanted to know where he was. At that moment, the big guy came in, taunting him, saying he had finally woken up. Yabai seemed upset that the big guy was still with them. He said that obviously it was him who had brought him to this place. Our boy asked how they brought him up the slope in such heavy rain. At that point, a gray-haired man entered the room and said he wanted to know that too. How could a boy, a big guy, and a child survive in streets full of zombies? Then Yura got excited and called him Grandpa Zhang. He explained that Jia Reng had pulled our boy out of the water but didn't know what to do. Luckily, he had been watching everything on camera and approached with a car to save everyone. Yibai asked if he saw everything, and the old man said he saw him slicing through the zombies like they were cucumbers. That weapon of his was incredible, and he wanted to know where he had gotten it. Our boy stood up and said he couldn't say where and demanded it be returned immediately. The poor guy threatened the old man but collapsed to his knees from exhaustion. The old man then said that it seemed using that sword really drained anyone's energy. He apologized for not introducing himself. He said his name was Zhang and he could be called Professor Zhang. This was his lab where he conducted research on the zombie virus. Yabai seemed to recognize the name. Then he remembered that the first researcher to name the black energy metal pearls was this guy. To a futuristic mechanic like him, this guy was a genius. Our boy hesitantly asked if he was really Professor Zhang. Embarrassed, the old man said that the title Professor was just something he liked to use because it sounded nice. But in reality, he was just a guy messing around. However, he was curious about that weapon, which could save humanity, and wanted to take a look at it. Yabai thought that if he was really the Professor Zhang, it might be worth it. But he crossed his arms and said he had something even better for him to research. That was a live zombie. Downstairs, the old man showed them everything on the table. His weapon was there, and the old man said he had just analyzed it, nothing more. With that, our boy stood up, and the old man was startled, saying he nearly broke his back trying to lift it. Our boy looked around and said that this place was incredible. With a workshop like that, it could make even better weapons. The old man asked if he had created that thing, and our boy confirmed it. At that moment, the old man got excited, saying he wanted to see him make another. However, our boy said the manufacturing process was a secret. The old man complained, saying that was bullying. Our boy just said that if he gave them some good food for a few days, he'd think about it. And on the old man's monitor, he had already seen information about the two of them a long time ago. Man, there isn't a single day of rest in this apocalyptic world. I even feel sorry for these zombies who are stuck with wet feet all the time. From inside the base, Yor was watching the cameras. Jen came in with a coffee, saying he was glad she was there. She said she was trying to do everything she could to help, and Zhang congratulated her for keeping an eye out for more survivors. However, he warned that unfortunately there was still no news of her father. She said that her father and Professor Zhang were good people, so she was sure he was okay. The old man then approached and asked if those two who came with her were really good people. That student didn't seem normal, knowing so much about this kind of technology at such a young age. Not to mention, he had a look in his eyes that he had seen in killers before. And the big guy seemed normal, but he believed he was hiding some secrets. At that moment, the big guy appeared and told the old man to stop bad-mouthing him to others. In his view, the old man was the weird one for living alone in such a huge place. With a helicopter landing pad on top, a bunch of cars, gasoline for several years, and lots of solar panels. Not to mention the mountains of food. The old man yelled, saying the big guy didn't know anything. He had been feeling for a long time that the apocalypse was coming, which is why he had been preparing for a long time. He was there in his house, eating and living for free, and still had the nerve to speak badly of him. The old man also mentioned that his goal in this place was to save all of humanity. The two of them started fighting, and Yor told them to stop. However, at that moment, the big guy got hit on the back of the neck. Our boy just told him not to move. He drew a little bit of blood, and Zhao Hang wanted to know what that was for. He just turned around and said that the zombies' mutation was going to start soon, so they didn't have much time. An even bigger disaster was about to begin, so it was best for them to prepare. The old man was startled by the talk of zombie mutation. Meanwhile, outside, those earlier friends were just watching the zombies. Man, I had almost forgotten those guys existed. He crouched down and told everyone that this place was surrounded, so they wouldn't be able to get out. One of them commented that the rain was heavy and the road was blocked. They didn't know what to do, and his friend Chiozing had fainted on the ground. The blonde guy said he unfortunately didn't know where Yibai had gone. There was no food in this building, so they were all going to die there. However, the blonde said there was still one way. He pulled out some pearls and showed them to everyone. The others remembered that this was what they had taken from the heads. The blonde said that out of curiosity, he had kept some of them in secret, and he recalled that the creatures that attacked them had said they consumed these. One of the friends asked if he was seriously thinking about eating that pill, and then one of them interrupted and asked what that was, pointing to the side. From the top of another building, purple smoke was rising. The blonde wondered why there was a tornado in that place. Meanwhile, back at Zhang's house, our post-apocalyptic mechanic was deep in his production. Zhao Hang commented that he had been there for a few days and had no idea why he was so focused. Zhang quickly said that he was probably creating equipment to fight against the zombies, and maybe several of them would turn out like that black-spined creature and the other one of fire. Zhao Hang said that if that happened, everyone there would die. After all, they didn't seem to have any weapons in that place. The old man explained that he only wanted to create a shelter, not a war zone. Why would he need weapons? But suddenly Yor came running and called for them. She said she saw her father on one of the cameras. The three of them immediately rushed out, and he asked where she had seen him. She sat down at the computer and said she saw him at the east entrance. She even saved the video and told him to take a look. On one of the cameras, you could see her father covered in zombie entrails blending in with the crowd. The old man said that from his movements, it didn't seem like he had turned into a zombie. Meanwhile, her father took advantage of the situation and ran away in disguise. The big guy said it was amazing how her father had managed to survive like that. And the old man realized that if the zombies weren't attacking him because of the smell, maybe it was something worth researching. Then Yor asked what they were going to do, and Zhang seemed to hesitate. He explained that the weather was really bad right now, and Yibai didn't seem to want to leave. Zhao Hang told her to ask Yibai personally, because maybe he had created something incredible. But the scene cut to him saying no. He still hadn't finished, so there was no point in her trying to rush him. And he told her not to bother him beyond the times they brought food. The big guy said he was already exaggerating and should at least try to comfort her a little. Our boy then asked why the big guy didn't go rescue her father himself. He was a bit confused by that. But then he saw that our boy had apparently made him a gun and a blade. Yibai explained that he had put his blood on them so he could use them. The big guy hesitated but managed to lift them much more easily than before. Yibai explained that these weapons with crystals could read his thoughts. However, just like how he controlled those light blades, he should be careful or he could run out of energy. Zhao Hang got excited, saying he had written everything down. Then he asked about the gun he had picked up, and our boy confirmed it. He explained that to fire it, you first had to wait for the gun to generate energy. The bullets were strong, but you had to aim carefully because you couldn't fire too many times. Zhao Hang got excited, saying this thing looked like a laser cannon. He ran out, saying he couldn't wait to test all of it. He ran out of the base into the rain, aimed upward, and shot a laser into the sky. He immediately started shouting that it was incredible. He prepared the blade, made a cut, saying that now he had the same power as Yibai. The old man was furious at the big guy for experimenting with everything. and Zhao Hang was thrilled, saying he was now invincible. He put on his boots and raincoat, saying that regardless of what zombie came, he could take them down. He looked at the camera and told Yue not to worry, that he would bring her father back in one piece. She was a bit worried and asked if he could really do that. The old man said that for now, they could only watch to see how long he'd stay so confident. He was wearing a headset, getting directions, and the old man explained that he had to go through the east. Unfortunately, that was the path toward the mountain, where there were no cameras, so he had to be careful. Zhao Hang told the old man to shut up, saying he could handle it. He follows the path and soon gets excited when he sees a bunch of zombies coming his way. The creatures advance and he smiles, saying it's time to test his friend's gift. He unleashes the famous green crescent slash, cutting everyone in half. He starts shouting that he's too strong now and afraid of no one. However, that's when he notices something on the side. Another person had seen that strange purple tornado. He finishes off a few more zombies and asks if the people in the room had seen it too. The rain seemed to be getting even worse and a purple tornado was forming on the eastern side. The old man said the camera couldn't see it, but the detectors were showing wind speeds close to level 6. It was very dangerous to stay outside, so he should return to the house quickly. Zhao Hang apologized to Yue and said that unfortunately, he couldn't win against the power of the gods. An old man Zhang told Yue to stay calm, assuring her that her father would definitely find a place to protect himself. Zhao Hang then approached the gate. Suddenly, the alarm started blaring and the old man got scared, going to see what had happened. He then told everyone to calm down, saying he had only brought a zombie because it seemed Yi Bai had asked him to bring one. Excited to see the zombie was alive, he said to wait a moment and ran off, saying he'd be back in a second. The old man, just as excited, noted that it was still alive. Alive is a strong word for that creature. The old man praised the big guy who got all excited, and Yue was happy to see that they seemed to be getting along better. Meanwhile, Hibai was in his production phase. The boy had already completed all the mechanics for the arm. The rain continued for a while until finally the sun started to break through in this cursed apocalypse. As usual, the zombies went crazy when they saw the sun. They went so wild they all started transforming. Out of nowhere, the creatures turned red and began jumping onto buildings. There was a poor little girl all happy that the sun had come out, until one of the big ones showed up and the creature was face to face with her. Her father heard a scream and immediately went to see what had happened. The whole family became a meal. Now the zombies had really evolved, jumping and invading everyone's homes. There was no longer a single safe place in that building. The schoolmates of our boy were fleeing in desperation. One of them was about to be captured, but the zombie got hit on the back of the neck. Someone hit another one in the head. The albino appeared. He pulled out the pill and looked at his friends. They immediately recognized Feng, the blonde who had been thinking about eating the pill. The scene then shifted to the street, where a bunch of zombies were running. They were all lined up, and atop a building was dear Roxy with her 2 zombies by her side. Jiaobo remarked that it was amazing how they were moving so orderly. Roxy laughed. She said she had been suffering for many days and wanted to know if they had found Yi Bai's location. Wang Sheng said he was in a house on the mountain that looked like a research lab and it would be easy to get in and kill him. Roxy, however, said that wouldn't be any fun. She wanted to make sure he knew exactly who was behind his death, and before that, she wanted him to feel the despair closing in. Back at the house, Zhao Hang and Yue were about to leave, but then they heard an alarm and Zhao Hang asked what that sound was. The old man immediately told them not to go out because something very big was coming, and strangely, a bunch of zombies was gathering in the city. The weirdest part was that they seemed to be coming straight for them. Zhao Hang, scared, asked how many there were. The old man said there were at least 1,000. The big guy was confused and asked if they were the last humans alive in this place. The old man replied that he had no idea, but it would be best to inform Yi Bai about it. The big guy ran off and banged on the door, calling out to our boy, saying that over 1,000 zombies were coming. Our boy said the professor had already told him. The big guy, excited, asked if he was ready to kill them all. Our boy replied that he was not ready at all. Scared, the big guy then asked how he was going to deal with these creatures. Yi Bai said he had told them to hurry up and start learning how to handle these situations. He still hadn't finished his research, and if this guy was the real Professor Zhang, he knew that the 2 of them together could solve this. The big guy said none of what he was saying made any sense, but Yi Bai stayed silent and continued working. With that, the big guy left, saying that in the end he could only rely on himself. He climbed a tower, and when he looked down, he was shocked. The horde was already at their doorstep. He already figured that even the walls of this lab wouldn't withstand a group that size. He ran to the car, saying he couldn't let them gather around. The old man was scared, wondering what he was planning. The big guy said to open the gate because he had a strategy, and if it didn't work, everyone had better escape from this place. Yo-Yo screamed, but the next second, he was already outside. He passed in front of the zombies, pulled out his gun, and fired the laser. With that, he wiped out the first group. He was excited because there were so many creatures he didn't even need to aim properly. He kept shooting and blowing everyone up. But from a distance, Roxy was watching all of this. That damn girl is a villain, but she's dangerous. Wang Sheng was on top of the tower, impressed with the weapon Zhao Hang was using. However, Roxy just wanted to see how long they would last. Zhao Hang kept shooting and blowing up the zombies. The problem was that no matter how many they killed, the number didn't seem to be decreasing. Then suddenly, a fireball hit right under the car's tire. At that moment, Yor and the old man screamed, and man, the car almost flipped over. Zhao Hang had to get out through the door, but standing right in front of him was the fire zombie. He got angry that this damn girl had launched such a sneaky attack. He fired a shot at her, saying he wasn't afraid anymore. However, she dodged it and launched another fireball. Zhao Hang dodged too, pulling off a mid-air matrix move and fired a bullet. The creature fled and he called her a coward, telling her to come back. The problem was that now he was surrounded by zombies. He fired a few more shots and Grandpa Zhang told him to return immediately because it was impossible for him to make it out alive. Zhao Hang started running, realizing he had fallen into a trap. But here came Wang Sheng. From above, there was no way for Zhao Hang to escape. But man, this big guy was fast, dodging again. He fell to the ground on his side and almost landed a shot. He pulled out the blade and nearly landed a slash as well. Impressive, he was fighting face-to-face with Wang Sheng. Wang Sheng wondered how this big guy seemed more agile than Ye Bai. He extended his weapon and told Zhao Hang to die, but the creature ran off. Man, this bald big guy made everyone flee. Meanwhile, Ruoxi was watching from atop the tower. Here she comes, up to no good. At that moment, the zombies that had been standing still started running toward him. Zhao Hang was confused as to why they suddenly moved so differently, but he still had the sword Ye Bai had created and unleashed the green crescent slash. The problem was that they were coming so fast he couldn't kill them in time, and he started trying to flee. What's this? Zombies were even being thrown at him. The poor guy wondered why these creatures were raining down on him, and the monsters kept falling beside him. Obviously, it was Wang Sheng practicing his zombie throwing skills. He grabbed another one and threw it at Zhao Hang. Zhao Hang had to use one of his gun's bullets to blow it up in the air. He kept running but was now begging to be saved. At that moment, one of the thrown zombies landed and grabbed his leg in a tight hug. Man, it came in for a bite. Luckily, Zhao Hang managed to slash it. The problem was that he had fallen to the ground. Now there was no time to get up, so his only chance was to land a shot. But then a green light appeared. An energy wave swept through everything in front of him. A second cannon shot passed by. Wang Sheng and the other one looked, trying to figure out what was happening. Ahead of the zombie horde, there were flashes of light rising. Another barrage passed by, and then came a massive punch like something out of Transformers. What's this? Man, our boy turned into Optimus Prime. The kid had built claws and legs. He was fully equipped. Wang Sheng got all excited, saying he had finally arrived. The old man celebrated, saying the boy was amazing. The big guy was impressed by all the armor our boy had built over the past few days. But Ye Bai told him to focus because the enemy was nearby. He ordered him to go back and kill the zombies on the right side. Meanwhile, he would handle the ones on the left until the main creatures showed up. Wang Sheng said that with him here, he was confident they could win this. Immediately, he went back to blasting the creatures. Ye Bai looked around and even activated a booster on his robot. The kid took off flying, activated his giant Optimus Prime hand, and smashed everything. Man, this kid had become insanely strong. The big guy was impressed, saying he had gotten just a bit too strong. At least after killing so many zombies, they were sure they have plenty of pearls to produce more weapons. Excited, he went back to finishing off more zombies. That damned Roxy was still watching from afar. Wang Sheng, scared, said that with this new power, there was no way they could get close. She got angry, saying the damn boy thought he was safe just because of that armor. Obviously, she wasn't going to let that slide. Another punch smashed into the zombies, crushing more of them. A laser fired forward as the old man watched on the screen. He was impressed, saying that the boy's exoskeleton was something that shouldn't even exist in this era. He couldn't even imagine how he had used all those scraps of metal he had abandoned to create something like this. That's when Yua revealed that what he was using was a metal that came from inside the zombies' heads. The old man was shocked by this revelation. Now it was clear why Ye Bai had been hiding this information from him for so long. He ran off, saying he was going to mess with that zombie they had brought in to study it. Meanwhile, outside, Wang Sheng was giving orders to the zombies again. Once more, he was sending them all to finish off Ye Bai. The entire ground started trembling, and the big guy said it felt like an earthquake. Ye Bai told him to stop thinking and just keep killing. But then he noticed that the zombies were strangely starting to jump toward him. As soon as they got close, Ruoxi clenched her hand and the creatures exploded right in front of him. Ye Bai had no idea what was happening. Ruoxi celebrated, saying that soon he would die. She kept sending waves of creatures and making them explode in front of him. Ye Bai couldn't remember the creatures being able to self-destruct in his past life. Meanwhile, Wang Sheng watched everything from the side. Jiabo remarked that this battle looked like a fight between two gods, and there was no way they could get involved. He then revealed that Ruoxi had eaten 7 pearls to become this way. Her body kept melting and reforming, showing just how much she hated Ye Bai. Jiabo asked if eating more pearls made things better, since instead of turning into a monster, she had gained powers. But Wang Sheng said, seeing how much she had suffered, he wasn't keen on testing that himself. Meanwhile, Ruoxi kept sending zombies to explode in front of Ye Bai. He had already realized that someone was controlling them. He turned, defended himself from an attack, and fired a blast at the tower. Man, the boy had perfect aim, and Ruoxi had to dodge it. Wang Sheng yelled for her, and like a fool, she almost fell. But she managed to float in the air. Then she got startled. Yabai was already right in front of her with Optimus Prime's giant hand. He blasted another shot, and she pulled zombies to shield herself. Man, she made a barrier of creatures, but I think they're all about to get swept away. She kept commanding the creatures, but at that moment, he leaped over and went in for a punch. She barely dodged, moving to the side, and Yabai opened his giant hand once again. She went in for the 1v1 and activated hers too. But man, she took a hit to the mouth. The poor girl got launched far away, and before she could react, she was pinned to the ground. Optimus Prime 1, Waifu 0. Yabai remarked that to have survived those bullets, she must have consumed the pearls, and he asked how many she had eaten. She didn't seem to respond and activated her power in her hand. But then came the stomping blow. Man, it's better if you don't try anything else, warrior. She started screaming in agony, but he said that in their past life, she had also made him lose an arm, and today was the day she would pay for it. But then he heard a sound nearby. Wang Sheng came running desperately, shouting at him to let her go. But Yabai just opened his giant hand and fired a shot. The monster managed to dodge and started circling him. He took advantage of the opening and jumped over. But our boy didn't hesitate and struck Wang Sheng's arm with a hand holding Ruoxi. With the other hand, he activated the laser and hit him right in the chest. Man, bad luck for the fool who was thrown far away. Seeing Wang Sheng defeated and Ruoxi easily captured, Jubo knew she had no chance. Perhaps her best option was to flee that place. The poor girl was still crushed under the giant robot. Our boy remarked that it was crazy how she seemed to be one of the chosen ones since she had consumed pearls and still maintained a human form. However, he knew how dangerous she was, so to avoid future problems, he was going to finish her off now. But just as he was about to crush her, the zombies started to transform. Yabai was shocked and wondered why they had already reached rank 1. Yo Yura reported that more and more zombies were surrounding the lab. Zhao Hang was holding the line, but some had already broken through and were climbing the walls. Ruoxi started laughing. She said they were all going to die and become her zombie slaves. Tired of it, Yabai threw her far away and she crashed into the zombies. He prepared his giant hand and unleashed a double laser. He clearly fled thinking she was dead, but you know how stories go. She's probably still alive, right? Meanwhile, the big guy was panicking because his gun ran out of ammo. He only had the sword left, but he was surrounded on all sides. And right at that moment, a rank 1 zombie jumped at him. He barely reacted in time and defended himself with the sword. He wondered if this was a new ability user. He slashed right down the middle of the creature, but instead of slicing cleanly, it only left a scratch. He was terrified. He looked back and all the creatures were starting to transform. The entire base was completely surrounded by zombies, and more kept coming. Zhao Hang slashed at one of the creature's chests and started running. He had no idea what kind of monster. This was because the sword wasn't working anymore. Maybe these were the rank 1 mutants Yabai had mentioned. Yura kept calling for Zhao and asking if he was okay. At the same time, some creatures had jumped over the barrier and were approaching the research area. But Zhang was focused on his research and didn't care about what was happening outside. Zhao was trying to escape but couldn't locate Yabai and had no idea how to get back into the base. Then Optimus Prime showed up and grabbed the big guy. Zhao was overjoyed and asked if now their boy could fly. He replied that it was just a jump with some gliding and ordered him to go kill the creatures approaching the lab. Now to kill these rank 1 creatures, it would take more than one slash. But you should be careful because these creatures were much more agile than before. The big guy collapsed on the ground, exhausted, saying he could finally breathe a little. At that moment, Yabai jumped to the top of the gate, prepared the Optimus hand, and began evaporating everything in sight. The problem was that while he was clearing one side, the creatures were invading from the other. The big guy was exhausted, calling out to Yor, saying he was thirsty. He then heard something nearby and saw a creature approaching. It was getting close when he managed to grab the blade and stabbed it in the chest. Man, he threw the first one to the ground and ripped it in half. This kid doesn't stop and hit it again. Then Yura appeared, saying she brought the water he asked for. She asked if Zhao Hang was okay, and upon getting closer, remarked that this zombie was different from the others. Inside the creature's head, he found a red pearl. Meanwhile, Professor Zhang finally found what they had been talking about. Even though the stone was dull, you could see a strange green light within it. The question remains whether humans become mutants because of this metal, or if the metal forms when they turn into zombies. He was eager to uncover all the secrets of that material. Meanwhile, outside, our boy was cleaning up the place. He killed one here, smashed 2 more there. A swipe of his hand, and he finally said it was over. He shouted from outside, telling the big guy to come collect the pearls because he had cleared everything. Zhao Hang gave a thumbs up, saying he was really efficient. Upon seeing the pile of dead monsters, the big guy complained that it would take forever to gather them all. He then turned to Yabai, saying that if he helped him gather them, he also wanted a mecha for himself. Our boy said he'd think about it later because now he needed to sleep. But then the old man came over to talk to him. He said it was time for Yabai to reveal all the secrets about that strange pearl. Meanwhile, outside, the big guy started his digging. There were so many creatures, and the most annoying thing was having to do it all alone. Back at the base, Grandpa Zhang was fascinated by the rare metal. Yabai explained that this pearl starts forming in the brain as soon as a person becomes a zombie. The longer it's exposed to light, the more energy the item accumulates. It was as if the zombies themselves could perform a kind of photosynthesis. The old man said it was interesting to know that's how it worked, but after analyzing it, he hadn't found anything to match what Yabai described. However, he did notice that inside this item, there were some active metal molecules that seemed to react to light and heat. Additionally, it was extremely resistant and had an affinity for both metal and blood. Yabai confirmed, saying it had a special affinity for human blood. That's why the virus spreads much faster in humans than in any other species. And the absorption of light makes them continue mutating after a certain period of time. The old man said that now it made sense why, during the day, these zombies would just stand in the middle of the street staring at the sun. However, today they were strangely running around like a bunch of lunatics. Yabai explained it was because they were being controlled by an ability user. The old man asked if he was talking about the spiked creature or the one that used fire and threw flames. Yabai explained that those two were normal mutants. However, the one controlling the zombies was a high-ranking mutant from his class named Ruoxi. The old man was confused, realizing that this item caused so many changes in the human body. Yabai said they had researched it for a while, and the only thing he knew was that if you consumed the item, you would undergo a mutation. Ability users had always been a threat, which is why they needed to be killed as soon as they were discovered. The old man was still confused by the item, the mutations, and now the rankings of zombies. He told our boy that he was sure his school didn't teach any of this, so where had he learned it? Yabai just said that maybe he could tell him in the future, but it would be more valuable if the old man figured it out through his own research. The old man then said he wanted to take a look at the new weapons Yabai had created. Yabai, exhausted, said it was fine as long as he didn't take apart the Mega because he was going to use it again. The old man left excited while Yabai said he was going to sleep because he was completely worn out. "You're just washed." Today, she wanted to ask our boy for help in rescuing her father. However, she knew that he had fought all day and must be really tired. So she placed a small blanket over him and sat beside him, thinking about how much she missed her father. The sun was already setting. Outside, the big guy was so tired he couldn't move anymore. He thought it would be amazing to have an item that could easily extract these pearls. What he didn't see was that a creature was watching him. It was Jubo, thinking that everything was over since thousands of zombies had been killed in one day. She believed that Wang Sheng and Ruoxi had been killed, so she was wondering whether she should surrender. The problem was, she knew she would be killed without hesitation because she was a monster. The bigger issue was that these new rank 2 zombies seemed to be attacking even creatures like her. She used up the last of her energy to create flames and burn those monsters. But if more creatures like that appeared or more started mutating, things wouldn't be easy for her. The only solution she saw was to eat more pearls and try to get stronger. But suddenly, she stopped and saw the albino on top of a tree. That Dandaf Fang was just staring at her. She was about to speak, but he stretched out his hand and jumped in another direction. He ran off, and it seemed like she might have followed him. Meanwhile, back at the base, Yura was asleep. The big guy was lying next to her, exhausted after collecting everything. Yura woke up in the middle of the night and noticed that Yabai had already gotten up. As always, our apocalyptic mechanic was back in the workshop. With his blowtorch in hand, he was at it again. The sun rose, and we were back at that convenience store from the beginning. Yura's father slowly approached. He entered the store looking for her, but everything was destroyed. On one of the tables, he found a message she left saying she was going to find him. The problem was that now he had no idea where she was either. Outside, the place was filled with zombies. As usual, they stood still with glowing eyes, staring at the sun. Back at the base, a spiky Batmobile had been born, armored with 4 giant wheels. Obviously, the one who was going to drive already had a huge smile on his face. This Yabai is something else. The boy built an entire car in one night. The big guy, excited, asked if it was made of rare material and if it could transform into a mecha. Our boy said it was just a regular car, but he needed to know it had 2,000 pearls and 12 rank 1 zombie pearls. The big guy agreed it suited him perfectly and asked when they were going to go test it out. He was eager to leave and find Yura's father, but at that moment, she asked them to wait. She said this time she wanted to go with them. However, Yabai said that outside was full of rank 1 zombies, and she would die if she went. She said she had been following all their orders, but this time she wanted to personally find her father. Our boy told her to stop being stubborn, or he would ask the professor to lock her up in the lab. The poor girl started crying, calling for her father. The big guy scolded our boy, asking why he made Yura cry. Suddenly, Professor Zhang appeared and told her to calm down a bit. He showed her a new drone, saying he had fixed it. It was his first invention using that rare material. Not only could it now carry much more energy and last a lot longer, but communication and stability had also improved. This way, she could stay safely at the base while still helping to find her father. Yabai praised the old man, saying he had quickly learned how to use the item. The old man laughed, saying he wasn't a real professor, but at least he managed to make something like this. Our boy then prepared the car and told the big guy it was time to go. Excited, Zhao Hang couldn't wait to fire up the Rhino. Yura asked them to be careful, and the big guy floored it. The Batmobile shot out of the base and tore through the forest. He was impressed that any terrain felt like asphalt. Then they hit the road, driving through all the other cars. excited that his new car made the others look like tofu. A while later, Yabai said they had spotted her father in this area. They kept driving through the city, but the big guy commented that it was strange there were no zombies around. That's when one of them smiled and a bunch of zombies were on the rooftops. The next second, they were all over the car, pounding on the metal. The big creatures were trying to break everything, but nothing was happening. One of them came to the windshield and the big guy told the creature to stop blocking his view. He turned to Yabai and asked if the car had any weapons. Our boy said gunpowder was useless, so he had prepared something better. As soon as he pressed a button, the entire car became enveloped in green electricity. The lightning struck the zombies and man, they evaporated instantly. I was as shocked as the big guy, jaw dropped in amazement. The protagonist then said if there were so many rank 1 zombies here, no one could be alive, so they should change direction. They took another path, but from the top of a building, someone was watching them. The person smiled, saying it looked interesting. They approached what looked like a shopping mall, and the big guy said that was where they had seen her father on the cameras. Our boy said to release the drone and told viewer to start searching for him. With that, she began flying the drone, checking each of the rooms. The big guy asked what they should do in the meantime. Our boy said if he wanted to check out the lower floors, he could, but for now, he was going back to sleep. The big guy said he felt safer in the vehicle, so maybe a good idea would be driving around and honking the horn. They kept driving down the road, and Yura said she saw some zombies approaching them. The big guy got scared for a second, but then got excited to test the new weapons. He pressed a button, and spikes popped out of the tires. With that, he drove toward the creatures and sliced through everything. Another button fired a laser, evaporating half the street. Yura asked him to be careful, reminding him that her father could be in one of those houses. He pressed the next button, hoping it wasn't too destructive. In front of the car, a meat grinder appeared. He drove over the first creatures and the system informed him he had obtained another pearl. The big guy's dream of having a collection tool had come true, and he went to give Yabai a hug. The car started swerving on the road and Yura was confused about what was happening. Inside, the big guy had hit his head 5 times. But at that moment, Yura screamed, saying she had found her father's car. It was about 500 meters away and she was sending the images. Zhao Hang told her not to worry, that they would find her father. However, she mentioned that the car was broken and the windshield was damaged. She was worried something had happened to her father when he came to get those supplies. Yabai told her to check the drone to see if he left a message because he probably wasn't too far away. Yura was still worried, wanting to know where her father was. Suddenly, she started to faint and slammed her face onto the keyboard. Immediately, the old man rushed toward her, not understanding what was happening. Back with Zhao Hang, sometime later, he stopped the car. Yabai asked the professor how Yura was doing. He explained that she had fainted and it seemed her illness was progressing. Apparently, she had been so focused on helping find her father that she forgot to take her medication. Fortunately, the professor had some stored. However, treating this illness wasn't his specialty and finding a doctor in this apocalypse would be even more difficult. He told Yabai to go to the hospital to get some medicine while he did his best to keep her alive. At that moment, the big guy came back and said he hadn't found any message or information inside the car. What was strange was that her father had left a lot of supplies behind, so after the crash, he must have run off in a panic. Additionally, the big guy found something odd. There were black boxes with no logos or descriptions, and they seemed to contain some strange pills. The protagonist said they might be some kind of medicine, so they'd take them back to Zhang to check. With that, they started the car and headed toward the hospital. The professor said that for now, he would keep an eye on Yura so he wouldn't be able to help them with the drones. Back in the car, the big guy was sad to learn that Yura had leukemia. Now he understood why Yabai hadn't allowed her to come with them. He talked about finding the medicine, but Yabai told him to shut up and just drive to the hospital. Yabai knew that in 2 years, all the supplies in the city would run out and this place would become an abandoned wasteland. And the worst part was that at the current pace, it was happening faster than he expected. Maybe, in the end, he wouldn't be able to change anything. And perhaps it was better to consider a different option than letting her live in this miserable world. The scene shifted to someone injecting a liquid into Zhu Bo's arm, which immediately began to regenerate. She was confused as to how that was possible. Even her flames had returned. The blonde in the hat said it was impressive that she was a fire user. Zhao Bo thanked him and asked which organization he said he was from. The blonde opened his arms and said they specialize in gathering people with abilities. Their goal was to create a paradise for those chosen in this world. Zhao Bo, confused, asked if the blonde was also a user. He said yes, and that there were many others like him. She asked if it was possible to maintain a human appearance like his. He said yes, that his group had the solution. They could live peacefully and happily in this new world. Meanwhile, in front of the hospital, the big guy was standing at the door. In front of him, he saw graffiti saying that this was private territory and to stay out. He told our boy that the place was occupied by people, so what were they going to do? Yabai simply replied in Optimus Prime mode that since it was a strategic position, it was expected that this would happen. But he ignored everything and smashed his way in. The big guy thought it was strange how quiet the place was. He kept seeing messages telling them to turn back or they'd die. But Yabai just told them to search different areas and communicate through the headphones. As they walked, the big guy said this was the second place he hated most in the world. He hated the smell of disinfectant but started sniffing the air. Obviously, in this apocalypse, no one was using disinfectant, right? But the strangest thing was that he smelled a sweet fruit. Suddenly, he began to faint and collapse to the floor. Yabai immediately called out, asking what had happened. He wasn't responding, and our boy found it suspicious. Then something started coming out of the ceiling. Yabai smelled it and immediately suspected it was some kind of poison. But Optimus Prime was equipped and he put on the mask. He activated his giant hand and blasted the duct. He warned the big guy that the place was a trap and told him to get out, but someone appeared next to him. Man, our boy didn't hesitate and went in for a punch at the doctor. But strangely, he stopped just before hitting her. She touched the robot and said his mecha was really cool. She then remarked that it must have been created using zombie pearls and that she wanted to meet the person who made it. Yabai wasn't sure if she was an ability user and simply asked who she was. The girl introduced herself as Tang Tang and said she was a sweet genius doctor. Yabai, however, asked why the poison and whether she had consumed any of the pearls. She said she released the poison to anesthetize the invaders but was curious about this pearl-eating thing. Yabai told her to forget about that and asked if she was the only one there. She said she was the only princess of that castle and asked if the demon king was trying to capture her. Yabai, exhausted from this, asked if she wasn't afraid of death. The crazy girl said death was as charming as candy to her, and if she died for what she loved most, she'd have no regrets. Our boy wondered if she was insane. He then asked what she meant by being a genius and what she was specialized in. She said she was a doctor specializing in viruses. Now our boy was interested. He immediately wanted to know what she had discovered about the pearls and if she used them to make those poisons. However, she didn't want to be asked so many questions and told him he was being annoying. She said he kept asking but never answered anything. So if he wanted to know something, he'd have to tell her who created that mecha. Our boy hesitated for a second. Then he said they had a research institute and that if she wanted, he could take her there. The girl got all excited. However, she warned that she had one more request and he would have to agree to it. The scene shifted to a desert where a car was parked in the middle of the road. Zhang called out for someone named Hakan and asked where she was. The girl responded saying she hated people who broke promises and asked if someone named Xiao Kai had arrived. The guy on the motorcycle, who must have been Xiao Qi, said that after this mission, they would go back and get married. Someone told them to stop flirting in the middle of a mission. A truck started approaching. The three of them, excited, said that just like Xiao had said, they would follow the plan. The truck passed in front of the car and they waited for the signal. However, the big guy asked Xiao Qi where the hell the signal was. Poor Hakan had been hit by the truck. Meanwhile, Xiao Qi was trying to escape, saying that things were getting weird. Another car pulled up behind the big guys. That's when he realized their plan had been exposed to someone. The big guy woke up, and all of that had been a dream because he had passed out from the girl's poison. He saw the doctor in front of him with a smug look on her face, and Yabai asked if he'd slept enough. He was a bit confused, and the crazy girl was giggling. She informed him that he had been hit with a special poison she created that put people to sleep for 3 hours straight. And the interesting part was that if she hadn't administered the cure, his body would have turned into a pool of blood. Yabai just told them to stop chatting and start loading all those items into the vehicle. Tang Tang politely asked Zhao Hang for help, but he wasn't too eager. Then she changed her expression and told him he'd better listen or he'd end up in one of those jars. The poor guy quickly grabbed the jars and got moving. She thanked him, saying they were true gentlemen. Meanwhile, Yabai wanted to know who she really was. He remembered the sweet poison from his past life. One of the main ways to fight zombies in the future was with this kind of terrifying gas. If this girl was one of the first to create such an item, it would be worth having her on the team and helping her develop it. At the very least, you couldn't let someone like her fall into the hands of another gang. A while later, everything was loaded. The car held way more than it seemed. She said it was very cute and that it looked like it had also been made using pearls. She remarked that it was perfect for a princess like her. The big guy asked our boy if it was really okay to bring along someone this crazy. Yabai replied that they needed her research on the medicines and her help with the trip. But then he heard a noise. A transformed creature appeared on top of a building. There was a chimera-like lion with many eyes, and everyone was terrified. Man, when the creature saw the three of them, it started drooling. It let out a roar, and the big guy asked if it was another ability user or some kind of zombie. But Yabai just told them to stop wasting time outside and get into the vehicle. The creature leaped at them, and our boy activated Optimus Prime. He landed a solid hit on the creature's arm, sending it crashing to the ground. While the big guy started the car, Yabai managed to hold the creature with his arms. He told them to take the doctor back to the base while he dealt with the monster. Then he landed a punch to the back of its neck. He hit it with another laser, and from inside, the big guy was wondering why this one was so much bigger than the others. Tang Tang explained that this big dog had been circling the hospital for a long time, which was why no one came near it. Zhang asked why she hadn't mentioned a monster like that. She looked confused, saying that since they came from outside, she thought it was already handled. As she approached, she said that with all the advanced equipment they had, it shouldn't be a problem. After all, they were humanity's last hope for survival. The big guy told her to stop joking, but she insisted she wasn't lying. She had researched the zombie virus, and the people who hadn't transformed were definitely the chosen ones. Outside, Yabai kept fighting the creature, landing another punch. Once again, the timing of things compared to his past life didn't make sense. These mutants weren't natural animals that evolved just because of the zombie virus. They were a mix of the virus and a lot of advanced engineering, something that shouldn't exist at this time. The creature shot a beam, and he barely dodged it. He smiled, saying he was finally starting to understand what was happening. He fired another shot with the Optimus Prime, hitting the creature in the neck, but the shot deflected and hit the building. Yabai realized that the creature was still able to reflect his attacks. The beast charged at him and swiped its claws, but he dodged to the side. It grabbed one of the bosses and started wrapping around it. With that, Yabai told her to stop being so disobedient and tore 2 pieces from her back. The monstrous creature collapsed to the ground, exhausted. She fired another beam, but Yabai easily blocked it with his hand. He said that her movements were now useless, and it was his turn. He launched himself at her with the robot, charging forward. With one strike, he hit her square on the head and started smashing her into the ground. Man, the boy was brutal when he finished off the monster. Among the remains, he found a massive pearl. Our boy examined it in his hand and said that once he transplanted something like this, things would get much easier than before. Meanwhile, the blonde guy on top of the building was watching and said this was going to give him quite a headache. Yabai called the big guy, asking if they could hear him. Unfortunately, they were already too far and the signal wasn't working anymore. It was time for him to head back, so he started flying with the Optimus. As he passed by the buildings, he glanced to the side and saw the blonde guy. The blonde waved and said it was a pleasure to meet him. Man, Yabai immediately stretched out his hand and blew him up right in front of him. The blonde appeared on another building and asked if Yabai had some kind of prejudice against ability users. Yabai didn't hesitate and sent another explosion his way. But the blonde said he wasn't interested in fighting him. He teleported onto the robot's arm and said he was just there to deliver a message and wouldn't take long. Yabai crushed him with his hand. The blonde said if he wanted to chat in that position, it was fine with him. He then introduced himself as Song Bin and invited Yabai to visit him in the Northern District. Yabai continued crushing him while the doctor said he was interested in calling the medical girl. However, when he looked at his hand, the guy had disappeared. It seemed he had some sort of body substitution ability. The threat wasn't huge, but it was extremely difficult to deal with something like that. And the strangest part was that the damned secret organization was already forming. Yabai didn't want to think about it, but he had to prepare for the worst. Interestingly, the name of this secret organization was actually Secret Organization. These guys weren't too creative, but Yabai knew that in 50 years, they would control most of the resources and the Awakened. The organization's goal was to create a world dominated by ability users. That mutant beast was probably created by them, and they had likely been watching him for some time. It did make sense for this organization to already exist, which meant they probably had someone from the future as well. The Batmobile arrived at the base. Tang Tang said it was a pretty normal place to have created that mecha car. The big guy remarked that she had some guts coming to a place she knew nothing about, but she said she trusted her intuition. She then asked Zhao Hang to hurry up and take out the experiments, saying she was doing it for Yor. The old man appeared and said it seemed they had really found a doctor. Tang Tang immediately approached and asked if he was the professor who created the mecha and the vehicle. Before he could say anything, she said she already knew it was him and that she was especially here to listen to him. The doctor commented that he dressed sloppily, but was clearly a mad scientist. Grandpa Zhang was confused, wondering where Yabai had found this crazy girl. However, he did recognize the name Professor Tang and knew she was a young genius with a PhD in viruses. She said she was honored and was clearly flustered. Meanwhile, the old man wondered how a girl like her had survived, but she just said to cut the small talk, adding that she was there to research the pearls with him. He was impressed that she had one of the pearls and praised her, saying it was amazing that she had created the mecha and the car. She called it Black Gold and asked if he had come up with that name. Now, Grandpa Zhang wasn't sure if he should reveal that he wasn't the one who created any of it, especially since it seemed she knew less than he did, and as far as he knew, Yabai wanted to keep it a secret. He then spread his arms and told her they could work together because he had made some new discoveries. However, first, she needed to help him with something else. The scene shifted to the medical room where Yura was lying in bed. A while later, Tang came out and the professor asked how she was doing. Tang took off her mask and asked if Yura was his granddaughter. The old man said not exactly, but he considered her as such. Tang made a hand gesture, and the old man asked if that meant the girl was okay. Tang said no, so the old man asked if it meant she had 3 years left. Tang corrected him, saying she had 3 months. She had seen many people with the same illness and had no idea how the girl was still alive. Her body wouldn't accept any treatment in this state, and the worst part was that there wasn't much they could do. Zhang asked if she was telling him to accept that the girl was going to die, but Tang said maybe they could use that. A while later, Yor began to wake up. She overheard the old man outside asking if they were really going to give her that medicine. Tang replied that it wasn't exactly that, but that she was thinking of using the material to create a new kind of medicine. She had noticed in some tests that the material seemed to emit an energy that could regenerate the surrounding cells. The old man said that's why some people who consumed it went through that transformation. She asked what kind of idiot would do that, and the old man replied that he had seen 2 people who consumed it and became extremely powerful. Tang was thoughtful for a moment and said that aside from guaranteed death, she couldn't think of anything else it could cause. She then suggested they focus on the next topic, which was creating a medicine using the material to help the girl. Obviously, they didn't have much time, but they also had to ensure she wouldn't turn into a monster. Meanwhile, Zhao Heng finally placed the last item on the shelf. Looking at it, you wondered why she valued this stuff so much. At that moment, Tang appeared and thanked the big guy. He immediately asked if Yura's illness could be cured. She responded that with the right idea, maybe it was possible. He said he'd go check on Yibai, but she said there was no need since he seemed to be handling things just fine. As he was leaving, she asked about them searching for Yura's father. He said they were looking, and she urged them to find him quickly since it could help with her treatment. Back in the city, Yibai was on top of a building with a giant robot. The sun was blazing and he hadn't found Yura's father. He decided to fly around and search for water until he found a shopping mall and decided to go inside. He broke the glass and found himself in front of a pool. Obviously, even though there was water, it wasn't drinkable. But he heard a strange sound and started to approach. Suddenly, something strange rushed past him, and he quickly aimed with the robot, firing a laser. Out of nowhere, the creature burst out of the wall and lunged at him. Man, the thing was huge, but luckily, his robot arms were huge too. He was confused by this new monster and readied his hand to fire, but the creature knocked him away. This time, Yibai slammed into the wall. He cursed the beast and fired again, but it dodged easily and came at him from the side. Yibai tried to punch, but the creature was too fast and dodged again. It managed to land a hit, but Yibai grabbed hold of it. He yanked the creature to the side and slammed it into the ground. Once again, he activated the laser and hit it right in the neck. The monster fell off, revealing a woman emerging from it. Man, now these creatures were shooting lasers too, and Yibai was shocked. Meanwhile, out on the street, the big guy was looking for Yibai. He couldn't find him until the drone activated. It was Yura, asking if they were still outside. He told her to rest more and let them handle the searching, but she said she couldn't sleep and felt better working with them. He told her it was fine, but not to push herself too hard. With that, she reactivated the drone and continued searching. But soon, she found something strange, and the big guy asked what it was. She explained that a strange group of zombies was heading toward the construction area. They wondered if there might be survivors there. That's when she saw a girl lying on top of a container. He saw through the camera and said he recognized her. Yura asked how he knew her. The big guy explained that she had been captured by that guy before, but at some point she escaped, and they never saw her again. Yura said they had to help her, and the big guy immediately activated the car's claws, saying it was obvious. He plowed through the zombies, cutting them all down. The girl seemed confused. Yura told her to look for a chance to jump into the car. Zhao Heng continued smashing everything in his path. He got closer to the container and told the girl to get in. She jumped into the back, and Yura said it was time to go. The girl slowly got inside, asking who they were. The big guy smiled and said they were the rescue team. Meanwhile, on the other side, Yibai was taking a beating as usual. Once again, he slammed into the wall and the monster came in for the finishing blow. But Yibai covered his face, knowing he couldn't look at it. The problem was that his face cover had been damaged in the previous fight, so he couldn't use it again. The creature prepared an attack that nearly hit him. He fired another laser, but the damn thing was too fast. Once again, he got hit by its tail. He fell into the pool like an idiot and realized he had been careless. He sank into the water and the creature activated another strike. The problem was that now he couldn't move his body. Spikes began to pierce the pool and he wondered if he was going to die there. But at that moment, a light shone and the creature took hit to the eye. Man, it was the big guy in the Batmobile, saying that the apocalyptic rescue team had arrived. The creature seemed confused. It changed its mind and tried to flee, but Yubai's giant hand grabbed its tail. He asked where it thought it was going. He tossed it back into the water, delivering a punch, and told the big guy that if the creature started looking at him, just blast it with a laser. The big guy said he understood. Before the creature could do anything, Yubai fired a laser into its stomach. The poor thing collapsed to the ground, trembling. He grabbed its head and demanded to know what this mutant was doing there. He wanted to know if she had been sent by the organization to kill him. The girl just stared and he told her to open her mouth or he'd crush her head. At that moment, she reacted when he mentioned the secret organization. Lena became desperate, saying she didn't want to go back to that place. The big guy asked how this girl had also turned into a monster. At that moment, the monster recognized the girl in the car and started calling her Lena. Yibai told her to stay still or he'd finish her off. Lena got out of the car and began asking if the creature was Annie. The creature under Yibai's hand kept calling out to her. The big guy mentioned to Yura that maybe she was another person transformed by the black material. Lena approached and asked her sister how she had ended up like that. The girl explained that she had undergone experiments by an organization. She had no idea of the pain she was feeling. Yibai then told her to move away, saying he'd end her suffering. But Lena begged him not to kill her because even transformed, she was still her sister. Yura stepped in front of Yibai and asked him to wait a moment. Yibai warned her to get out of his way or he'd smash that drone. Yura pleaded, saying they had just reunited and he couldn't take her life like that. But the protagonist argued that someone transformed had an extremely unstable mind, making it too dangerous to leave her alive. Even so, Lena wouldn't move and kept crying with her sister. Yura begged Yi Bai to at least let them talk to see what would happen. But Yi Bai reminded her that this creature had merely killed him and there was no way he'd let her walk away alive. However, the big guy suggested Yi Bai thank Yura because if it weren't for her, it wouldn't have arrived in time. With that, Yi Bai began to retreat. He let go of the creature and walked away, calling them a bunch of idiots. The monster stood up and asked if they were from the secret organization. Yura said no, that they were just walking through the city looking for survivors. Annie then explained that after the transformation, she managed to escape. However, the organization kept sending giant dogs to hunt her down in this place. Yura asked why she had attacked Yi Bai, to which she replied that she was scared and thought he was part of the organization. She approached Lena, saying it was good to know she was okay, and that she had no intention of hurting anyone there. Yura seemed relieved and suggested that Annie join their group. They were studying zombies at a nearby place and maybe she could help. Lena asked if both of them could really be part of that, and Yura said it would be a pleasure to help others. The only problem, of course, was that the monster wouldn't fit in the car. Annie told Lena that she would follow her wherever she went. The big guy asked Yura if she was sure about bringing a monster like this back to their home. She confidently replied that they were just two sisters in danger and helping them was everyone's responsibility. Yi Bai just got into the car and sat down. Seeing this, the big guy said that since Yi Bai wasn't refusing, it was time to head back. So with the car, the drone, and the monster, they all left. The big guy was impressed that the creature could move as fast as them. A while later, they returned to the base. Naturally, the doctor and Tang were shocked to see the creature in front of them. They immediately asked Yi Bai what was going on. Lena introduced herself, explaining that she lived in the east. But when the disaster started, she and her sister got into a car and drove south. From the creature's head, Annie appeared. Lena introduced her, saying she had been captured by an organization and turned into an experiment. While the old man was terrified of the organization, Tang found it adorable. She approached the creature, telling her not to be afraid, that she just wanted to touch her a little. But the creature flapped its fins and Tang became concerned. The monster moved to the side and jumped into the pool. Tang wondered if the creature was experiencing anxiety. The big guy asked how the two of them had survived there since there was no food and it was just the two of them. Lena explained that for a while, a man had been guiding them and helping them escape from the zombies. But suddenly, he disappeared, and they had been waiting there ever since. The big guy asked who this bold person was that helped them survive all the zombies. She explained that the person had given them clothes full of zombie guts, saying it would mask their scent, which was why they hadn't been detected. Immediately, the big guy started to imagine that this might be Yura's father. At that moment, Yura called out and asked if this person had short hair and was named Yahello. Lena said yes and realized Yura was the girl from before. That's when Yura said that Yahello was her father and then fainted on the spot. Tang helped her up and asked why she had escaped from the hospital. The big guy looked at Yi Bai and asked why they didn't go back and search for her father. But Yi Bai replied that once night fell, things would get more dangerous outside and he needed to strengthen his mecha. At that moment, the old man approached and said it was time for Yi Bai to give a proper explanation because he seemed to know everything. He had no idea why Yi Bai was keeping all these secrets or what the danger was in telling the truth. The big guy added that if something really happened to Yi Bai, no one else would be able to survive without his help. Yi Bai stayed silent for a second and then said it was indeed time to share everything with them. He told everyone that he was a traveler from 50 years in the future. The big guy immediately believed him, saying that now it made sense why Yi Bai didn't seem like an ordinary person. The old man was shocked by this revelation and asked what kind of time travel Yi Bai was talking about. Tang was amazed, saying that humans had survived for more than 50 years. Yi Bai explained that everything started with that pearl, the item that began the destruction of the world but also brought about the greatest technological advancement they had ever seen. In studying the material, they discovered that it was possible to send someone's consciousness back to the past. However, the person in the past had to be within the activation radius of the item. The old man was horrified, and Yi Bai explained that this was how they were able to go back to the beginning of the virus. Unfortunately, though, they couldn't go any earlier than that. He further explained that after years of analysis, they never found any other material like it on Earth, leading them to believe it came from another world. The big guy immediately started considering that this might be an alien invasion. Yi Bai said that if that were the case, the aliens had already won. In less than 50 years, there would be fewer than 10 million people alive, and even those would have to constantly fight just to survive. In the end, Yi Bai had been chosen to go back to the past and reshape everything. The big guy now understood why Yi Bai had been so determined to gather the material from the start and asked how old Yi Bai really was. He replied that he was probably nearing 70 by now. However, every time he returned to the past, he found himself at the first moment he encountered the virus in school. The problem was that even in the past, it wasn't so easy to change things. The big guy was shocked, saying you could write an entire story with that information, who would have thought. Tang asked if they were destined companions in the future. Yi Bai replied that he wasn't sure, but he hoped so. Confused, Zhao Hang asked why Yi Bai was saying that and if more changes would happen. Our boy just looked at Tang and said that the virus was evolving, she must have noticed it. Tang confirmed, saying that their survival was already a miracle. That's because the zombie virus wasn't transmitted by a bite but spread freely through the air. Immediately, the two of them stood up in shock. asking how they had been transformed. Tang explained that's why she liked to say they were the chosen ones. Some people seem to have certain antibodies that allowed them to resist the virus, but she couldn't guarantee that a bite wouldn't cause transformation. Yibai revealed that the truth was, they had all been infected a long time ago. In theory, they would eventually turn into zombies as well. Even though they might be immune to the airborne virus, that didn't mean they couldn't be infected by other means. Zhao Hang was amazed that Yibai had managed to hide all of this for so long. Yibai said he had done so because he had recently confirmed his suspicion. It seemed that someone from the future was accelerating the progression of the virus. This group was known as the Black Order. The scene switched to Zhu Bo. Turns out, Zhu Bo was a man after all. Up until now, I had thought it was a woman. He really managed to return to normal. I thought the blonde guy was lying to him. Zhao Bo smiled, saying that now he was officially a member of the squad. He was thrilled, saying they were incredible. Meanwhile, a white-haired girl watched through a window. Back with Yibai, he explained that in this timeline, people were transforming into creatures much faster than usual. Additionally, the first zombie mutation was supposed to happen weeks later, but this time it occurred much sooner. Moreover, he had encountered psychic beasts today, which were created by this Black Order. He suspected that this group had likely sent some agents from the future. The big guy then asked why the Black Order had so many weapons and knowledge but didn't seem interested in saving humanity. Yibai explained that this group believed that people with superpowers were a kind of gift from fate. Their goal was to obliterate all of humanity, leaving only ability users. Tang found all of this a bit confusing and said it sounded pretty cringe. The old man suddenly remembered something and said that the black box Zhao Hang had brought contained some pills, and when he analyzed them, he found the same material inside. It seemed to be a catalyst for something, and he wondered if it was related to the Black Order. Yibai said they were probably contaminating people's water with the virus, which would explain why so many were transforming. The big guy mentioned that Yuer's father's car was full of those items, so maybe he was part of the group. Yibai said they would investigate that later, but for now, the important thing was that as long as the Black Order existed, humanity wouldn't be able to survive. He then showed a map with the changes he wanted to make to the base to increase their chances of surviving an attack. He asked Tang to keep taking care of Yuer, who in turn asked if Yibai was her brother by any chance. Yibai asked if that would be a problem, and she said it was just a medical thing. He replied that it had nothing to do with that and told the big guy to go back and help Tang and the old man prepare everything. Back in the room, Yuer slowly woke up. She got up and saw Lena sleeping next to her. With that, she left the room and began walking down the corridor. In one of the rooms, Tang was saying that Yibai didn't seem to be lying about his story. She drank something and slumped over the table, saying she had hoped the problems would end, but they were only increasing. At that moment, Yuer appeared beside her. The doctor asked what Yuer was doing there and told her to go back to sleep. However, Yuer said she couldn't sleep and wanted to go outside for a bit. Tang replied that everyone was sleeping and soon Yibai would be back to search for her father, so there was no need to worry. Yuer then said she had overheard her talking to someone and asked who else was there. Tang responded that it seemed she had heard correctly. She pointed to a head and said, "It's him." Yuer, startled, asked why she was talking to a zombie. The head belonged to a childhood friend of hers who was a fool. Yuer was confused, so Tang explained that he was a kind-hearted guy and that Yuer couldn't imagine why he wanted to become a doctor. He was rejected countless times but kept studying until he finally made it. In the end, he was the only one who stayed by her side. When many people at the hospital tried to steal her research, he stood up and told everyone the truth. When the disaster happened, he was the only one who used his own body to save her. Even while he was fighting and being transformed, he kept protecting her. In the end, there were so many pieces on the ground that she didn't even know which ones were his. Even so, she collected the pieces in the hope that if she combined them with future technology, she might be able to bring him back to life. She then laughed and said she was joking. She knew life wasn't that simple. Yuer awkwardly asked if she had liked that person. Tang revealed that strangely enough, he was the only person who ever touched her heart. She then told Yuer to go back to sleep because she would need to talk to Annie later. Meanwhile, outside, Yuer went to see Annie. Annie emerged from the water and stood face to face with her. They stared at each other for a moment and Yuer introduced herself, asking how Annie was doing. Annie explained that she always had to stay hidden because she couldn't afford to be found by the organization. Yuer said that what had been done to her body was cruel and asked if it hurt. Annie responded that just thinking about the past gave her chills, but nowadays she didn't feel anything anymore. Yuer was thoughtful for a moment and Annie said she could tell that Yuer also seemed to be in pain. She gently touched Yuer and asked how she could tell. As the monster was about to say that humans are all the same, she suddenly fainted. Annie caught her with her fins and called for Tang. Tang came running, panicking, asking what Yuer was doing there when she had told her to go back to bed. Tang touched Yuer's head and said that at this rate, there was no way to save her if she kept acting like this. But Yuer simply apologized and said she had a request. She wanted the doctor's help to complete the surgery. Meanwhile, Yibai was working on Optimus Prime 2.0. At the same time in the city, Yuer's father was now searching for Annie and Lena. He didn't know where they had gone and wondered if they had been attacked by zombies. It was strange since he had protected the area well and there shouldn't have been any creatures around. Not to mention the massive tire tracks on the street, he had no idea what had passed through there. Suddenly, wings flapped in the sky, and when he looked up, a dragon was flying by. The creature circled a building and he felt relieved. However, at that moment, a man with a blue beard appeared, saying he had finally found him. Back at the lab, Yor was inside a tank. Outside, Yebai and the old man were watching everything. Zhang commented that he was unsure about using that item to try and cure her. But Yebai explained that they just needed time for it to work. He had gathered the right portion of the pearl's energy, and as long as Tang followed the formula, everything should go smoothly. Of course, some adverse reactions could occur, but at least she would be saved. The old man asked if they had done this many experiments in the future to know all this. Yebai explained that this type of cure was known as the elixir of immortality and was sold to the elite back then. While it was effective in treating diseases, the idea of eternal life was still a mystery since it didn't last long. The old man said that with a name like that, it sounded even more convincing. Yebai then explained that this was the last conservative option they had. After that, they would have to use the material entirely and see what happened. The old man then said that now everything made sense. That's why Zhao Hang was back out on the streets searching for her father. He warned Lina that the place was full of zombies and told her to check the right side. With that, she started deploying the drone but apologized because she wasn't very familiar with it. Trying to keep track of all those camera feeds was difficult for her, as she considered herself a bit of an airhead. That's what she told herself. Zhao Hang told her to stay focused, saying they would soon find Yor's father. At that moment, Lina mentioned that she had seen someone who looked like him. On the street in front of the drone, they could see a hooded man running. Desperate, he was fleeing. This time, it was from a bunch of rank 1 zombies. His cloak wasn't working, so he took it off and threw it aside. Behind him, attached to the cloak, was a grenade that exploded right in front of the swarm of zombies. The problem was, none of it was effective. The zombie was walking through the flames until a laser came and cut through it and 2 others. Immediately, Zhao Hang did a drift, stopping in front of the man who looked confused. The big guy opened the car door and asked if he was Yao Yuer's father. He looked confused, but our bald friend just told him to get in the car quickly, as there was no time to explain. Since the man had just been saved, he decided to get in, especially because the streets weren't safe anymore. With that, the car sped away. However, the blue-bearded man was watching all of this. He asked the blonde guy if he was really going to let the man escape that easily. The blonde said they all belonged to a special group, so they would have to be cautious and take things very seriously. The blue-bearded man, however, said that his style was more about showing up and smashing everything instead of messing with little tricks. But the blonde guy reminded him that unfortunately, they had very few people left on their side. That was thanks to the girl who had used a horde of zombies to attack their base, but ended up getting them all killed. The blue-bearded man found it strange that the girl, who had such a high-level ability to command 1,000 zombies, had lost to that base. The blonde guy replied that it was a sad situation as they couldn't revive any of the zombies they had lost. Meanwhile, the car was arriving at the base. Zhang appeared, worried, and asked if it was really Eping. Yuer's father simply replied that it had been a long time since they had seen each other, and he apologized for causing so much trouble. However, old Zhang said they should thank the heavens that he was still alive. He then told him to go inside and take a bath while they checked on the girl. The next scene shifted to Eping, looking terrified. Seeing Yuer inside a capsule, he asked what happened to her. The grandfather explained that when Zhao Hang brought the girl, she was fine, but recently her condition had been getting worse. And what made it even harder was that she had been pushing herself to the limit to try and find her father. At that moment, Eping felt devastated, saying he should have returned sooner. The old man told him to calm down because there was still a lot to uncover. First, he handed him a box and asked where he had gotten it from. Eping knew they had found it in his car, but said he had no idea what it was. Zhang then asked how he had come by it. He explained that he had spoken with a man named Loro from a group called the Black Group, which initially seemed like a charity organization. He had received these drugs, which were supposedly meant to help Yuer, but he never imagined the truth behind it. The old man asked if he was part of this group and what the drugs were for. Eping explained that these drugs had caused several emergencies in the city, and when he discovered the true nature of the organization, he wanted out. He had continued working with the group, hoping that one day he could escape and return to Yuer. However, when he fled the place and returned, he had been surrounded by a horde. But in the end, this still happened to her. He told himself that he had always taught her to spread love and kindness, yet he had been helping the wrong people. He began lamenting, saying he was truly an incompetent father. That's when Tang appeared and told him that Yuer was still alive and fighting. She then told him to donate some blood since he was her biological father. Unfortunately, no one else there could donate to her, so he was their only hope. Immediately, Eping stretched out his arm and told her to take as much blood as she needed. The doctor cheered, saying it was a good thing he had arrived, or else she would have had to use that material on the girl. The father looked confused and immediately shouted that he wouldn't allow that to happen. The doctor was puzzled as to why, and Zhang wanted to know what she understood about it. Eping explained that he wasn't sure why, but the organization was planning a massive experiment. Their target was the entire city of Anchi, and countless lives would be lost. Zhang said it didn't matter much, since most of the population had already died, so there weren't many people left to lose anyway. The father insisted that they mustn't use the material on the girl, no matter what. Zhang, however, argued that the only way to fight against those guys was by using the material, and besides, they had nowhere to run. Apeng, desperate, said they needed to escape that place as quickly as possible. He rushed out, saying he would grab Yor and leave, but then he was struck on the back of the neck. Yibai simply told him to shut up. The poor man collapsed, unconscious on the floor. Yibai then turned and told them to collect the blood and start the surgery. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, which was completely intact, something was happening. Inside a bar, there was Bluebeard. A long-haired guy asked how they had all joined the secret group. Bluebeard says he only joined because all of his companions had died, so he was left alone. The blonde guy next to him said that he needed to protect all the people he still had around him. The man at the counter said he understood and commented that if they could become new partners, that would be incredible. He just expected there to be more people in this so-called secret group. Bluebeard told him not to worry, that there were plenty of members, but they were out recruiting more people. Meanwhile, the blonde guy said he was curious about what kind of society the superhumans would create. They didn't need to eat, could switch to combat mode, and weren't even afraid of zombies. However, he had the feeling it would be hard to get people to unite now. Bluebeard said he agreed with everything, and from now, they would just wait for the consultant's responses. But the blonde guy asked if he really thought it was okay to keep getting information from someone from the future. Without hesitation, Bluebeard said it was the best option since she knew everything that was going to happen. He told the guy, whose name was Yufeng, that he had heard from the consultant that this blonde guy would become very strong in the future. However, Yufeng commented that if Yibai also came from the future, why wasn't he interested in becoming a superhuman? Now that I've realized it, guys, this Yufeng is that blonde friend of the protagonist from the beginning, the one who turned into the albino beast. Bluebeard said that Yibai wasn't doing so well and was just a coward who couldn't handle the success of others. However, the blonde guy said that the last time he saw the boy, he was completely different from what he remembered. Bluebeard laughed, saying that at least whoever wronged Yibai in the future would probably suffer in this life. But one thing was certain, they would need to kill Yibai since he was getting in the way of their plans. Someone then clapped and said that he had said everything he wanted to hear. It was the blonde guy with the hat, who said that the world Yibai wanted to create was completely different from theirs. For now, they were still trying to inspire the boy and create a change in him, but if he didn't accept it, they would obviously have to kill him. Everyone in this room had been born from the black gold. They had abandoned their old bodies and accepted a new rebirth. They needed to dive even deeper into the mysteries of this item to gain a power never before seen in this race. The guys even had a little slogan saying that the Shadow Squadron was eternal. These bastards also had 30 different names for God's sake. Back at the base, the big guy was sleepy, and our boy was fixing the car. He asked Yibai where his friends from the future were. Since they were younger back then, they must be kids now. Yibai just said that the present and the future had changed, so whether his friends were still alive was a mystery. Besides, in this life, he might never meet them again. The big guy then asked how he was going to rebuild the organization he wanted. Yibai said he didn't need specific allies, but rather people who shared the same vision. Confused, Zhao Hang asked what that vision was. Yibai then explained that the goal was to eradicate the black gold and the supernatural people and restore the proper order to humanity. The big guy said those were simple things to explain but extremely difficult to achieve. However, Yibai then explained what had happened to future generations who had become dependent on the black gold. To maintain their powers, they needed to create zombie concentration camps, where people would be transformed to generate more materials. The problem was that in a regime like this, the number of people kept decreasing. Those with supernatural powers didn't want to fight against it. His group was the last of the rebels who still tried to oppose that regime. Zhao Hang then remarked that for someone who wanted to eliminate black metal, Yibai was very good at using it to create things. Yibai explained that in order to eliminate it, you first had to understand it. As soon as the enemies were eradicated, they would also get rid of any equipment they had created. Zhao Hang commented that it was amazing that Yibai followed such a serious philosophy. But Yibai said not to praise him too much because if it weren't for his allies from the future, he would have given up a long time ago. And if it weren't for those who saved his life, he would have already been a zombie himself. Sometime later, Apeng woke up in the upstairs room. He commented that lately, the weather had been a bit strange. Zhao Hang said they should at least be happy that the rain had eased up. However, Apeng wanted to know if they really weren't going to escape that place. Zhao Hang commented that according to what Yibai had said, the group had already spread across the entire world, so trying to escape anywhere was useless. The father then said that he knew you were one to stay because the way he had raised her made her too innocent. But Zhao Hang replied that after everything she had been through, she was certainly capable of making her own decisions and having her own thoughts. She was much stronger than he imagined, and besides, it was she who had requested the surgery. Apeng said he knew that, but he couldn't help but worry. Zhao Hang then mentioned that in the past, he had also worried a lot about his own son, to the point where they fought and his son ran away, not wanting any more contact with him. Unfortunately, it was only after his son disappeared that he realized they had never forgiven each other. Apeng asked if his son was still alive. Zhao Hang said he wasn't sure and that it remained a mystery, especially because he knew the boy wouldn't want to see him. However, they had to leave the past where it belonged because it was time for them to end this storm. Meanwhile, outside the base, a giant robot stomped on the ground. Man, our boy had created Optimus 2.0. The big guy was in shock, saying this must be the ultimate mecha. Aping just said that if the guy from the faction wanted to find him, then he would make sure that wish was granted. That's because he didn't like the idea of letting him proliferate so easily. He extended his arm Iron Man style to the big guy, saying his job was to take care of the place while he was away. He told him not to worry, that anyone who came there would be eliminated. Yibai told him to keep taking good care of Yor. As soon as the big guy agreed, he activated the thruster and flew off. The fool stood there watching, saying it was amazing. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, the blonde guy was just observing everything. The whole group was watching and they knew it was Yibai. It was insane that he had created a machine like that in such a short time. Apparently, the consultant really knew who the best people were, and it was time to start with a plan. Bluebeard, excited, said he couldn't contain his excitement. The blonde guy then said he would let him start the show. Immediately, the creature began to transform. His hand turned red, something came out of his back, and man, he turned into a flying horned monster. At that moment, he took off, and it was bad news if he was heading toward the base. Inside, Apeng was conducting some experiments. Zhang was talking to Yor's father through the computer, saying that Zhang's compatibility was perfect. Apeng thanked him and said that in the past, he would have had to work his whole life to afford such surgery. It seemed they were going to perform a stem cell transplant. Apeng said he didn't know how to repay them, but Zhang told him to just focus on the cameras to avoid enemy attacks. Apeng agreed and resumed his search. Suddenly, a purple energy ball approached and exploded above the base. Immediately, everyone felt the entire place shake. Of course, it was the transformed Bluebeard in the sky. He stretched out his hand again and launched a second attack. The place seemed to be protected by a barrier, but even so, everything inside was trembling. Zhang wondered if someone was attacking the base. Apeng said there was nothing in front of the base and the other cameras weren't working. Meanwhile, the big guy had already run to the car and warned that there was a giant winged monster throwing fireballs. Considering the surprise attack, it was clear it was from that strange organization. Zhao Hang immediately asked them to open the gate so he could go out and deal with it. Zhang agreed, but told him to be careful. The gate opened, and he drove out. From the roof, the new torpedoes that our boy had installed began to fire. Immediately, the big guy said the enemy would pay for their audacity to attack the old man's base. The laser fired, and Bluebeard was startled. Man, but the bastard barely dodged it. But the next volley was coming. Meanwhile, Yibai was flying far from there. However, he found it strange that the communicators had gone out, and he wondered if he was entering the region controlled by those guys. It was best to be prepared to give his all in that place. But then he felt something. He veered to the side and dodged another attack. There were several robots on the ground, also made from black metal. He immediately recognized them as being made by the Black Guild, so now he was certain that someone had indeed come from the future. He fired a laser, the creature defended itself. Yibai was impressed that they already had that kind of technology. However, he flew up and stomped on the creature's head. He punched another robot, and the Transformer-style battle was in full swing. He dodged another attack, pulled out a claw, and struck another one in the chest. But as soon as the first one fell, he looked up and saw 5 more coming. He began to wonder why there were so many of them and asked himself how long these people had been back from the future. Once again, he launched a barrage of missiles that hit them directly. 4 exploded in the sky, and he hit another with a laser. Meanwhile, at the base, the big guy was trying to hit Bluebeard, who was just dodging. The long-haired guy asked if they were going to invade the base now. Loro confirmed but said the guy was scared because of the electric fences and the poisonous gas. Loro said they would enter, but not now, as they would be easily destroyed. However, that was already expected, and that's why he had some other plans. At that moment, Apeng warned everyone at the base that the big guy seemed to have managed to scare off the winged creature. He asked if Yor was okay and how the surgery was going, but then something appeared on his neck. A lot of blood spilled out and he fell to the ground. Immediately, the blonde guy emerged from his corpse. He said that blood mark was perfect for being placed on him. Even better, because it seemed he was in the control room. Meanwhile, outside, Zhao Hang was having a blast. He launched another barrage of torpedoes toward Bluebeard. The creature tried to escape by flying but realized it couldn't and turned to cast a spell. It managed to blow up some of the torpedoes, but a laser hit it squarely in the hand. Man, this guy exploded and it fell to the ground like trash. The big guy was excited, saying the car's combos were amazing. Slowly, he approached the big creature, which started forming another fireball. It slammed into the ground, launching a barrage that flipped the tank over. The car began to roll and Bluebeard said this was where things would end. He leaped toward him and with both feet grabbed the side of the tank. He then moved closer, saying it was time to open that can. However, the big guy, unafraid, opened the door right into his jaw. He pulled out his pistol and prepared to fire. The monster tried to dodge but still got hit in the shoulder, causing him to stumble backward. Man, if you thought the big guy would stay in the car, you were wrong. He slid down the hill and threatened the guy. At that moment, Bluebeard said he now understood why he had been sent to that place. The big guy asked what he was talking about and why he seemed to be laughing. The monster kept laughing, called out Zhang's name, and said it had been a long time since they last saw each other. He then began to transform back and asked if Zhang didn't recognize him anymore. That's when Zhang recognized him as old Xiao. Meanwhile, back at the base, Tang was watching over Yuer. She seemed relieved that nothing had fallen on top of the capsule. Zhang informed them that the attack must have cut the power, and now they were running only on generators. However, the big problem was that the stem cells they had absorbed from the father had been destroyed. Tang said it was no problem. They could just ask him again. But at that moment, the blonde guy walked in saying that, unfortunately, he wouldn't be able to come back to that place. Zhang immediately turned and asked who this guy was. The blonde guy introduced himself as a member of the organization and apologized for what happened. Shocked, the old man couldn't understand if these guys had managed to destroy the barrier or if they had taken down Zhao Han. The blonde guy said he wasn't that hostile and had only borrowed a little piece of Mr. Yo's flesh. Zhang asked if he was saying that he had killed Hyping. The blonde guy replied that to humans he was dead, but now he would become a zombie, which was even more magnificent. He then told Dr. Tang not to worry, as they weren't going to hurt her. But Zhang ordered him to leave, saying no one was going to help him. The blonde guy then said it seemed Yi Bai had told everyone everything, but maybe they shouldn't trust him completely. After all, from what he had heard, this Yi Bai was someone who abandoned others when he needed to save himself. Meanwhile, our boy was slamming the giant robots into the ground. He looked to the side and saw two more approaching. Nearby, a girl was watching him. This girl was definitely one of those who had also come from the future. Our boy finished off another robot and some others started shooting at him. He easily defended himself, turned around, and finished off the other two. They were slowly evaporating, but he found it strange that these creatures were too weak, as if they were just basic construction robots. Then a gate began to lower. Inside, there was another creature. Two white legs stepped out and some sort of flamingo, peacock lion, or whatever it was appeared in front of him. He remarked that, at least in terms of style, this faction never disappointed. The creature let out a scream and immediately charged at him with a roar. Yi Bai managed to dodge, but she activated something in her stance and launched a follow-up attack that sent him flying out again. Man, the monster kept sending attacks while he dodged. Then she activated something in her eye and aimed it at him. There was some sort of slowing light and he didn't even need to look directly into her eyes. While he was paralyzed, she launched a barrage of purple fire. Unfortunately, he couldn't dodge in time and the boy was burned. Back at the base, Zhao Hang asked why that guy was still alive. But Bluebeard said it was the same thing he wanted to know about Zhao Hang. He insisted, asking what was happening and why he was with this group. He asked if he had been the one who betrayed them and caused the deaths of Xiao Qi and Ah Kun. Bluebeard said he was involved, but he hadn't done anything on purpose. The big guy then shouted, asking why he had betrayed everyone when they had trusted him like a brother. Bluebeard responded that their thing of stealing from the rich to give to the poor was eventually bound to fail. On what was supposed to be their last mission, they were discovered by the police. However, thanks to the new organization, he was saved in time and managed to rescue his friends who were injured while Zhao Hang disappeared. The big guy asked if he had managed to save Ah Kun and Xiao Qi and if they were alive. Hesitant, Bluebeard said yes, everyone was safe and they should join forces like before. But the big guy shouted, asking what kind of joke this was. He already knew that the organization's plan was to eradicate humanity and create a world only for the transformed. Now he was sure that not only had Bluebeard transformed, but he had probably done the same to their two old friends. Bluebeard responded that the past life was behind them. They couldn't continue living like that forever. They had no identity and were hunted by everyone. But now, in this new organization, they were superhumans and could change humanity. At that moment, his tail got slashed. The big guy had hesitated but still cut off a piece of him. Once again, he demanded that Bluebeard tell him if Ah Kun and Xiao Qi were okay. Bluebeard's expression changed and he said that the big guy was just as annoying as always. He flew off and warned that if the big guy didn't want to talk, he would take him to meet them. Back at the base, the old man told the blonde guy that Yi Bai was strange, but he was sure that the boy tried harder than anyone else to protect Yuer. Stong pondered for a moment and asked how they were going to explain this then. Why was the little girl trapped in a capsule for creating superpowered people? He then said he understood that Yi Bai wanted to create psychics who would obey his every command, and it seemed like Yi Bai was hiding his identity as a mechanic very well. He then went to the computer and mentioned that these so-called apocalypse mechanics were fanatics for black gold. They were experts in experiments involving human bodies. Zhang asked what he was planning to do. Song simply replied that he was helping the boy finish what he wanted. But with a small adjustment, they would turn this girl into a psychic loyal to the black faction. He pressed enter and said that now, with one more ability user, the organization had become stronger. The old man cursed him as human trash and ran at him with an iron bar in his hand. But suddenly, fire came and melted the bar. Jabo was standing next to the blonde guy. He warned him to be careful and not to play with fire in that place. The long-haired guy responded that he was eager to meet the new company, not to mention that he had a special connection with her. The blonde guy then ordered him to deactivate all the defense tools in that place. He said he was on it. However, he started shouting in frustration, saying he was angry because there was nothing to burn in that place. He then spotted Lena on the ground. He asked if he could burn her since no one said they needed to take her alive. The blonde guy authorized it, and immediately he approached her. He told her to scream a lot when she started cooking. He then grabbed her arm, but the place began to shake. The ceiling started to crumble, and the transformed Anne appeared. The old man was startled, and she activated her eye power. Man, in the next second, she had already finished off everyone in the room. The bodies all dropped to the ground. Zhang thanked her and told her to take care of those bastards in the lab. Tang rushed to the computer to try to undo the changes Song had made but wasn't succeeding. At that moment, Anne activated her power again, this time toward Eeyore. Tang was impressed and asked how that power seemed to be weakening the strength of the black metal. Since that was the case, she asked Anne to keep doing it to slow down the mutations. She remembered that Yebai had told her to activate the backup protocol in case of an emergency. But then, out of nowhere, a blue slash hit Anne in the back. It was the damn Yufeng who said it seemed he had found the person the organization was looking for. He said another slash, but this time Anne dodged it. She activated her big mouth and shot water at him, but he moved to the side. However, the exchange of attacks caused Tang's pieces to fall all over the floor. Back at the enemy base, the creature had just set Yebai on fire, but he defended himself with a barrier, saying he was spending too much energy in that place. It was time to finish it in a flash. He pulled out the blowtorch from his hand and aimed it at her. The creature caught fire and tried to use her eye attack, but he dodged it. He launched 2 torpedoes that hit beside her foot, and by the time she looked, he was already coming from the side. He slashed one of her legs with a chainsaw. The creature fell to the side, and he immediately smashed her semi-eye. Up above, the white-haired girl was just watching. She commented that he had passed with flying colors. Our boy stood in front of the fire with the creature being devoured by the flames. But suddenly, he looked behind him and activated a laser aimed at the girl. The top of the base exploded. He looked up and didn't see her, but she was soon next to him, saying he truly deserved the title of Master Mechanic. Once again, he tried to punch her, but the damn girl teleported away. She appeared on the other side, saying it was a shame he hadn't joined the mechanics committee. Angry, Yebai wondered why he kept running into people who had teleportation powers. He flew toward her, but the girl just stretched out her hand. At that moment, his robot seemed to stop functioning. He wondered what was happening and why it seemed like he was running out of energy. He then asked if she was a traitor to the committee and what time she came from. She said that once she had been the great sage of the Northern Mountain. She worked with a mechanical council that he should be familiar with. She lowered her hand and Yibai's robot crashed to the ground. He wondered why everything seemed so heavy. She then informed him that this black gold manipulation came from 100 years in the future, so he better stop resisting. The only option he had was to join this organization. Yibai seemed to recognize the name of the great sage of the north. He said that everyone thought she had died since she disappeared out of nowhere, but it seemed she had become a dog of the black organization. He said that by doing this, she was truly a disgrace to her grandfather. Man, this girl was Dr. Zhang's granddaughter, and her name was Zhang Yu. Could she be the future Yor? Now, I'm confused about what happened here. We're figuring it out, but she said that joining the Shadow faction was the most effective thing to do, and everything she did was to continue evolving what her grandfather had created. However, Yibai asked if her plan to turn all humans into strange creatures was the so-called Grand Plan, and that she must have surely killed many of her mechanic friends in the time she lived. Yor said she had always told the truth, but few believed her. And to avoid any future problems, she had no choice but to eliminate each one of them. She warned that if Yibai continued to oppose her, his fate would be the same. Our boy said he was eager to hear what brilliant ideas she had. She then asked if he really believed that black metal was all there was to this apocalypse. He said that as far as he knew, the meteor brought this virus, and that's why humans began to transform. She said that for a long time, she believed that too. However, the truth was something no one wanted to share for fear of causing panic. Yibai then asked what great secret had made her change sides and start killing so many people. Yura simply said it was because of a meteor. 5 months ago, it fell on this planet and brought the zombie virus. But in 100 years, another meteor just like it would arrive, only this time 10,000 times larger than the first. She explained that the first meteor came only to gather information about the planet, and the second would be the real attack. Even combining all the weapons they had on the planet, it was impossible to stop a meteor that size, especially a radioactive one. And considering that in the future, the war on the planet had left them without any aerial control, they were defenseless. As a last effort, the committee had an epiphany and began building ships to flee the planet. But by luck, she had found the same time travel machine that Yibai had used. Even though the limit of this one seemed to be the consciousness of 2 people, it was more than enough. Angrily, he asked if everyone was going to die. Why was she trying to turn them into zombies? Yor explained that from the moment the first meteor fell, it was inevitable that everyone would eventually transform into creatures. She had only accelerated the process by distributing black gold. To save humanity, they needed to gather all the superpowered people and stop the disaster that was coming. Meanwhile, back at the base, Anne was fighting Yufeng. Zhang was under the rubble when Dr. Tang, unconscious, appeared. Suddenly, Song started showing up, saying that was a close one. He said risking everything like that was madness and asked if everyone was okay. He began pulling Zhang out and said it was good to see he was still alive. Then he mentioned that he needed to take him alive since that was one of his granddaughter's requests. The old man was confused, not even knowing she was still alive. The blonde guy said she was an extraordinary person who had become the great sage of the mechanics. In a century into the future, along with their organization, they had already conquered the entire Earth. Confused, the old man asked if he was talking about Zhang Yuer and if she had really become a member. Man, I was startled. Apparently, they're different people, right guys? The blonde guy said she was the great sage behind the organization and might have gone even further if she had her legs. And I don't know if the translation is wrong, but the blonde guy said that one of old Zhang's experiments had caused an explosion in the past that made her lose her legs. Apparently, Mr. Zhang's son had sent her abroad. However, she never held a grudge against the old man, and that moved Song emotionally. He then said he was sure Zhang must feel guilty about it, so it would be good for him to meet her. After all, he imagined that's why Zhang wanted to take such good care of Yuer, since they looked alike. He then kicked Jubo in the head, telling him to wake up already. He ordered him to bring the old man and Dr. Tang, saying they were heading back to the base. But then someone entered the room. They looked confused. It was Yuer's father, who had transformed. The blonde guy quickly told Jubo to finish everyone off and take them away. But Jubo was on the ground, terrified. Zhang's friend had risen, covered in filth, and was advancing on Jubo. He tried to throw flames, but the creature seemed immune. Zhang woke up and saw Xiaoxing protecting her once again. The blonde guy kicked Yuer's father, saying that at such a crucial moment, things couldn't go wrong. The old man called out for aping. But right at that moment, Yuer's capsule began to glow. Meanwhile, Lena was watching Anne, all beaten up outside, and Yufeng was taunting her, telling her to give up because she couldn't compete with him in terms of speed. Even poor Zhang was unconscious. Bluebeard said he had taken it easy on him, but it would be better if he became a superhuman quickly because he'd be much stronger. But then energy appeared on his back. From the middle of the base, a green laser shot up into the sky. Back in Yibai's battle, he told Yuer to stop making excuses. This idea of risking all of humanity for a meteor didn't seem logical. But she explained that the second meteor followed the signal sent by the first one, and that's why it was inevitable that it would eventually collide with Earth. They had no way to escape, and everyone would have to become extraordinary creatures to survive. Confused, Yibai asked what her plan was then. Was it to gather a bunch of black gold or create a bunch of superhumans? She said she wanted to control and guide them all completely, like a queen, just as she imagined Yibai wanted to be. He said it was a tempting offer, but he refused. That's because he had no interest in being the leader of a gang full of members who were about to explode. He activated his shield and said that as a member of the Mechanics Association, he would never side with those who were against humanity. He fired a laser in her direction, which she easily blocked with her hand. He launched more torpedoes, which exploded, but she simply teleported. She remarked that it was amazing how quickly he had developed the technology to recharge energy so fast. But without black gold, it was only a matter of time before he ran out of power. Her energy once again sank Yibai's giant robot. He activated the thrusters on his back to try to escape, but she merely stretched out her hand and slashed at him. The boy kept flying, sending more torpedoes, but she protected herself. Amidst the smoke, he rushed in and delivered a shockwave. But this time, it did nothing. Still, he celebrated because at least now she couldn't teleport. But Yuer said it was ridiculous to think she would be neutralized by that kind of attack. After all, his system would overload long before that happened. Yibai insisted, saying that if he could take her to the next life, it would be enough. But Yuer asked that his priority wasn't self-preservation. He kept attacking, saying he would never be controlled by others. Yuer then asked why he had joined the Mechanics Committee. He replied that at least the committee could distinguish between the horrors of humanity. They believed in continuing to search for a way to save the people on this planet.